Logan, I'd like you to meet Aurora Monroe, also called Storm. This is Scott Summers, also called Cyclops. They saved your life. I believe you've already met Dr. Jean Grey. You're in my school for the gifted, for mutants. You'll be safe here from Magneto.
What's a Magneto?
A very powerful mutant who believes that a war is brewing between mutants and the rest of humanity. I've been following his activities for some time. The man who attacked you is an associate of his called Sabretooth.
Sabretooth? Storm. What do they call you? Wheels? This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Cyclops, right? You want to get out of my way?
Logan, it's been almost 15 years, hasn't it? Living from day to day, moving from place to place, with no memory of who or what you are.
Shut up.
Give me a chance. I may be able to help you find some answers.
How do you know?
You're not the only one with gifts. Where are you going? Where's he going? He's over there. What are you doing? Over here.
What is this place?
Welcome to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Perry Constantine.
And I am the other host, Derrick Ferguson.
How you doing today, Derrick?
I'm doing quite well. Thank you very much. And how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good. I actually just finished watching the Doom Patrol series on DC Universe.
Oh, okay. So how'd you like it?
I thought it was pretty good. I don't know, you know much more about Doom Patrol than I do, but I read the Morrison run, and I read some of Gerard Way's recent run. I think I read 3 issues of that. But mostly I only know them from the Morrison run, and it took a lot of stuff from the Morrison thing. In fact, it made me want to go back and reread the Morrison comics, which I'm doing now, and I'm seeing, I'm re-remembering all the things that they brought in from the comics and put in the show.
Yeah, I've only I think I mentioned this to you, I've only watched the first 4 or 5 episodes. And actually what I'm just planning on doing anyway is either I'm just going to, because I see that they have the first season out on Blu-ray. Mm-hmm. I'm either going to just get that or either just subscribe to DC Universe so I can watch it. Because you know what? I can't get used to you know what? I'm a TV guy. If I'm watching something, I'm not like your younger generation people. Y'all watch everything on your computer. You know, I can't do it. I have to watch a TV show on a TV. So I figured that's the only way I'm going to finish watching it. But to get back to your point, yes, from the episodes I saw, I would say about a good 50 to 60% of everything is taken from Morrison.
Yeah. Although I'm the same as you, actually. I use the streaming services and everything, but I use them all through Apple TV, so I watch everything on the big screen. I don't watch anything on my device, really.
Yeah. I know people that, they watch the movies and they watch TV shows on, and I say, you know what, I can't do it because my computer is where I work.
Exactly.
And my TV is where I play. That's where I play with my Xbox and watch my movies and everything like that. So it's compartmentalized, in my brain. I don't associate sitting at my computer and watching a movie as doing what I'm supposed to be doing,
I feel the same way. In fact, that's why I insisted on getting a desktop and having a set location for my computer, because I know when I sit at that desk, that's time to work, not time to play.
Exactly. That's why I have a desktop, and I'm always going to have a desktop. Now, I do have a laptop because, and my wife had been after me for years. Oh, you ought to get your laptop. No, I don't want a laptop. So I got one, and you know what? This past summer, I actually did enjoy going outside and sitting out back on the deck and doing some writing back there. I did enjoy it. However, I like a desktop, and I'm always going to have a desktop because I associate that with actually working.
I use my laptop mostly because, I use it in my lectures, for PowerPoint presentations, for showing videos, that kind of stuff. I don't use it that much for writing, but every now and then, there's a coffee shop near here. I might take it there and do some plotting work or try to come up with some brainstorming or that kind of thing. Not really hardcore writing, though.
Right. No, I don't do any like hardcore writing on there, but like if and occasionally I'll, I'll just be upstairs and I'll be hanging out with my wife and I'll just open up the laptop and I'll just be messing around on there, but like for like the serious stuff that I do, I go to my desktop and I do that, and that's what I associate it with, so that when I sit down at my desk, I know I'm here to work. It's not, no frivolity. So I don't watch TV on it. I don't play games. I don't, which is why I guess that my computers last as long as it has. Because people tell me all the stuff that they do on their computer, and I say, "Wow, I don't do half of that crap." I mean, I would say, seriously, there's about a good 75% of the programs that's on my computer I've never even opened. Seriously, because I have no use for it.
Well, I was going through my computer because I got one of those cleaning programs to like sweep through stuff, and I went and I looked through the applications, and it showed me like all these applications and support applications that I haven't used in about 10 years or something. Yeah. So I'm just going through and I'm just like, how is that even still there? I didn't even know that was I still had that. I don't remember what that was for.
It's the same way with me. I look and I'm looking, I said, wait a minute. Okay, well, what's this? And I open it up and I realize that this is a program I never opened up.
Yeah.
Have no use for it. And I'm like, if I have no use for it, I don't mess with it. But if it ever comes a time that I do need that program, well, then I'll learn how to use it.
And I'm with you on the people watching stuff on their devices. I got one of my coworkers, he was talking about how he watches stuff on his iPhone or something like that. And I can't do that. It's too small. I want the big screen experience.
Yeah. I mean, I know people that now. Okay, I understand. Let's say if you work on a boring job at night and you have your tablet and you want to watch. Okay, listen, that I understand. But if you're home and you have a big screen TV that's a few feet away, why would you squint your eyes trying to watch something on a TV, like a telephone or I don't know. I just don't get it. I'm not. Like I said, that's for the younger generation.
You saw Joker, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
So just like really briefly, because we're going to be talking about X-Men today, obviously, but what did you think of Joker?
I liked it. I thought it was a good movie. Of course, I don't think it's the greatest movie ever made. Which seems like every time a superhero-based movie comes out, that automatically gets to be the greatest superhero movie ever, or comic book movie ever made. And actually, it's really not that much of a comic book movie. It really isn't.
No, it's not. It's more Scorsese's greatest hits type of thing.
Yeah, because I don't believe that this guy that we're introduced to and who we follow through this movie. I think by the time you get to the movie, I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it, but I think the movie does make its point that this isn't Batman's arch enemy.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, it's nice as a Elseworlds type take, but it's not the Joker.
Which is how I took it, and if you read my review, and anybody who wants to read my review of Joker, you can go to Ferguson Theater and you can read it. That's what I said too in my review. I said I took this as an Elseworlds, thing, and on that basis, it works. And yeah, this is like Martin Scorsese light.
Yeah,
it really is. His DNA is all in this movie.
Oh yeah, everywhere. Even getting De Niro in the movie too. Yeah. I mean, as a matter of fact, again, in my review, I recommend people, if you haven't seen it yet, sit down and watch King of Comedy first. Because this is almost like a sideways version of King of Comedy. Yeah.
But I mean, listen, I enjoyed it for what it was. I didn't expect it to change my life or to be a spiritually uplifting experience, which is what I think most people expect every movie that they see is supposed to be. As pure entertainment, it was enjoyable. The acting, I like the acting, although everybody kind of pale in comparison to Joaquin Phoenix because he's on screen through 90% of the movie. I mean, the movie is his. I mean, this is just like for him to, do his thing.
Oh, there's several scenes where I think the director just set up the camera and he's like, all right, Joaquin, do whatever you want to do.
That's what I think too. I think sometimes he just let him riff and go ahead and do exactly what he wants. I know that some people have issues with the whole mental health aspect of the movie. Mm-hmm. I don't know much about that. I'm not going to speak upon that, but I do think that the movie did succeed in showing how an individual with emotional and psychological issues can fall through the cracks of society if society does not pay attention to these individuals. And this is the result. This movie is like showing how you get a personality that can walk into a church, a school, or a synagogue and just shoot people with no remorse.
I pretty much agree with you. It's an entertaining movie. I don't think it's as great as everybody says, or I don't think it's, this mark of the downfall of civilization that other people say it is.
Yeah. And actually, also, here's another thing. I think maybe that the reason why they say, okay, well, we're going to call this Joker and we're going to set this in, the DC universe, is that if they did this just about like a regular guy, it might have hit a little bit too close to home in our current climate.
Well, also, it may not have gotten made at all because Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix, like his whole proposal for this movie to Phoenix was, let's use the studio to make an independent movie.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's basically what they did. And they just said, well, let's just slap the Joker name on it.
Well, that's what I figured. Yeah. I mean, that's what I figured, because this does remind me of a movie that would have been made back in the heyday of independent film.
Right.
I'm talking about the 70s and the 80s when independent film actually was independent film.
Yeah. If this wasn't the Joker, like, I could have easily seen Netflix or Hulu or something backing it.
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, there's a scene that's at the end of the movie, and you know what scene I'm talking about because it's very familiar in Batman, in the development of that character. But there's a scene that's at the end that I kind of feel was tacked on, actually.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
It
I feel like at the end they just,
tacked
okay,
on.
well, you know what? We got to stick this in here just to remind people that this is, because Thomas Wayne didn't even actually have to be Thomas Wayne.
No, not at all. They only did that, and he's nothing at all like Thomas Wayne in any other incarnation of Batman.
Well, you know what? Some people have said that he could be the Flashpoint. The
that
Batman
would work. Yeah. Although Thomas Wayne was also only like that because of seeing Bruce die.
Although, let me say that the Alfred Pennyworth I know, if anybody had grabbed the Alfred Pennyworth I know like that, he'd have broken both his arms right then and there.
Oh, yeah. Like, if you look at some of the other recent Alfreds, like Sean Pertwee from Gotham or Jeremy Irons, like, they wouldn't have stood for that shit.
Oh, no. I said, listen, I'm glad they didn't give him a name. I mean, I know that's supposed to be Alfred, but see, I'm just going to imagine in my head that that's just some random servant that, maybe that was the nanny's husband or something like that, supposed to be looking after. Yeah, because that wasn't Alfred.
Yeah.
Because Alfred wouldn't have took that shit.
All right, but today we're going with my pick, which was really kind of the birth of the modern superhero film. I mean, we had Superman in 78 and then Batman in 89, but it kind of died after Batman and Robin. And some of the other ones that came out in the meantime, there was Blade, which was not at all marketed like a superhero movie. But then this one, X-Men in 2000, was the one that really kind of reinvigorated the genre.
Yeah, because, and I know I'm going to catch heat from this from a lot of people, but as I've said before, people say, well, if it wasn't for Blade, there wouldn't be any Marvel movies. And I don't know. I really don't see it that way because, as I've said before, and I will keep on saying, the Blade movies was marketed more as Wesley Snipes action movies. They were not marketed as superhero movies or Marvel movies or whatever, but X-Men was blatantly and marked, okay, this is a Marvel movie. This has got Marvel superheroes. They got costumes and superpowers and all that other stuff that come along with superheroes. So, folks, this is the real deal.
Yeah. I mean, in the eyes of Hollywood, Blade would have got them to start paying more attention, think, oh, maybe we should take another look at this stuff. But Blade did not embrace the superhero aesthetic or the concept, really, and so much so that they didn't even put Marvel's name in the credits.
No. And as I've said before, most of my friends and family, they went to see it. And when I told them that, Blade was a character that's been running around comic books since the 1970s, they said, what? They didn't know because, the character was not presented that way. Not that people cared. Not that people cared because, as I said, they went to see because it was Wesley Snipes.
Right.
Killing vampires. And who wouldn't want to see that?
And the Blade comics were never successful either. I mean, he was a supporting character for most of his publication run at first. He was part of an ensemble group, which only lasted... Night Stalkers, I think, only lasted 20 issues or something. It
wasn't until after the success of the Blade movies that Marvel decided, okay, well, this is the A-list guy now. So we're going to, promote him that way. And we're going to handle him that way.
Well, they tried. Before the movie, they gave him a solo series, which I think it barely made it to 10 issues, then it got canceled. And then after the movie came out, they did a few things. They tried a few miniseries. They tried an ongoing series that got downgraded to 12 issues and then downgraded to 6. And they made a few attempts. They tried when they did the Max line, when they're having the mature readers line, they tried a Blade series there. Didn't get any traction, and they even had Howard Chaykin do a run on it, and he couldn't even get numbers up on it. And it was that was canceled after like 12 issues.
And in addition, something a lot of people either didn't know was there or they forgotten, there was a Blade TV series.
Yeah, with
Sticky Fingers.
Sticky Fingers, that's right.
Yeah, playing Blade. It was on TNT, which is now the Paramount Network.
No, it was on Spike, that short-lived Spike network.
It was on Spike?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was on Spike because I remember.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Spike had it on there, and it actually was doing pretty well. Like it got decent enough ratings to justify a second season. Except what happened was it was just too expensive to produce, so that's why it got canceled.
Yeah, they had like a big cast, and you could tell from the locations and the sets and the stuff like that they spent money on this. The only problem I had with the series was that they basically made Blade a supporting character in his own series. Yeah, and that's one of the tough things about Blade is because he doesn't have a whole lot of depth as a character. He's basically just there to kill vampires and grunt a lot. So it's kind of hard to build a series out of a character like that. Yeah, because in the series, the main character actually was this policewoman. She was a detective that that Blade was using to infiltrate like the vampire cult. Right. Because he had moved to Detroit or Chicago or someplace like that. And actually, that's who the series was about. That was the main character, this policewoman that was infiltrating, this. And it was like a whole bunch of different clans, vampire clans that were fighting each other and stuff like that. So he was using her to infiltrate. And that's what the series was about. And I watched it, but like I said, you know what? If you're going to give me a series called Blade, then that's who I want to be the main character. Yeah, it was all right. It was enjoyable for what it was, but it wasn't as good as, at least wasn't as, it was better than the third movie, I'll give it that. Well, I think everybody agree anything would have been better than the third movie. But today, so X-Men, what were your experiences with this movie or with these characters going in? First of all, I have to go back and I got to explain to you people. Perry, you've heard this before, and a bunch of you other folks that are hearing this, you've heard me go on and on about this before. But for the benefit of you that don't, I've been X-Men. Because I've been reading comics ever since the early 1970s. I go back to when comics were 15 cents. So I've been reading X-Men for a long time, even before they became popular. I like the X-Men. Now, for the reasons that you think, which I will go into later on, but okay, so I like the characters. Now, in the movies, I like the movie version of X-Men better than the comic version. And I will tell you why. Because to me, the X-Men concept does not work for me when they are set in a universe where there's 500,000 other super beings. Okay? In the movie version, it's just mutants and humans. And to me, okay, now I understand why humans hate and fear mutants and why there's such animosity, because it's a battle for the planet, is survival of the fittest. Who's going to rule the planet? Okay, you got me at that one. Now, here's where I'm going to piss off a few people. Because anytime I say this now, I will get well-meaning people who would tell me, well, you must not understand the correlation between that and the civil rights. And that's when I have to stop them and tell them, you do realize I'm black, right? You do understand I'm black before you go into this trying to explain to me about civil rights. Okay. The reason why I don't like that thing, and that's the thing everybody says, that okay,
and also for you, because you grew up close to that era, so it was much more fresh for you growing up than it was for other people now.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up, I've seen things, I've had things done to me, so that's why this whole, the X-Men are just a stand-in for, the civil rights and everything like that. Well, not for me, because those people back in the 60s and 70s who went on those marches and protests and everything like that, they didn't have superpowers to protect them from dogs and fire hoses and being beaten with nightsticks and being lynched. Mutants have superpowers to defend themselves, okay? Second of all, 90% of mutants are good-looking white people. They are. They're very handsome. They're very good. Let me ask you something. Jean Grey, she's a psychic, right?
Yeah.
So she can read minds. So she can tell if a guy's lying to her. Who wouldn't want to have a daughter who can protect herself like that from potential rapers and, guys that want to do her dirty?
Yeah.
And she looks like a fashion model, right?
Right.
Okay. So, mutants in the Marvel Universe, they got it pretty good. So, like I said, in the comic books, I don't like this whole thing about, we hate mutants and we hate and they hate mutants only until they become an Avenger. Then as soon as they become okay, they're a good guy.
Now, I'm going to push back on you a little bit on this. I get what you're saying about the civil rights comparison. That's what we're here for. And I think that's one of the things that the movie series did well, is that they kind of took it from being mostly about comparison to the civil rights movement and made it more about LGBTQ pursuits for equalities, because it makes more sense, because you've got the whole things like, being in the closet, passing as normal, and it fits the mutant aspect a lot better, I think.
Okay.
So, and that's something. I think that's something they did really well in this. Like, especially in the second movie, when Iceman's mother says to him, have you tried not being a mutant?
Right. Have you not been right? Yeah. And like you said, I think that that correlation that works a lot better, at least for me. But like I said, the movie version of X-Men works much better for me because it's just them and humans. It's not like Iron Man, and that's why I am really not. I know everybody is all hot and lathered to see the X-Men in the MCU, but I'm not. I really think that they work best when they're set on their own. And you know what? We got enough mutants that, they can be in their own universe.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to come back to that in a minute, because I'm going to push back on you on that as well. But to take it, because I'm the big X-Men fan around here, so I'm definitely going to be pushing back on some of this stuff here.
You love the X-Men to death, and I like them too. I mean, Cyclops. I love Cyclops to death. That's my. I absolutely detest what Marvel has done to that character, because I love him.
So now the civil rights thing, a lot of people, they think that it was Stan Lee who introduced that concept, but really, when Stan Lee created the X-Men, he was being kind of lazy. He was just kind of throwing stuff together at that point. And because he said in interviews that, he didn't really, he said the hardest thing about writing superhero comics was thinking up an origin story. He's like, you can't have every character you can't have every character bathed in cosmic rays or, bitten by a radioactive spider. So he's like, so when I got to the X-Men, I was trying to think, what should I do? And then he said, you know what? Then I just thought to me, fuck it. They're born that way.
Yeah.
And then he created the X-Men off of that. And the whole idea of Magneto being this kind of tragic character and the whole Martin Luther King, Malcolm X similarities, which also going in that route kind of does a disservice to Malcolm X and what he actually stood for, I think.
Because in this movie, if you remember, at the end, that's what Magneto says to Charles Xavier, that famous line of Malcolm X, by any means necessary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He even says it. Yeah, which I had completely forgotten until I saw the movie. That's, oh, shit. I said, yeah, okay. But then again, seeing this movie brought back a lot of things for me that I had totally forgotten that, happened.
Right.
And
but everyone
wonderful.
thinks that stuff was baked into the original comics, that, you had Professor X and Magneto, who were both kind of sympathetic characters, but really, Magneto was just a straight-up supervillain in the early days. He didn't have this kind of nuance or anything like that. In fact, I don't think they ever established, until Claremont came along, that Xavier and Magneto were friends.
Right. All that stuff came later on, like you said, when, the X-Men was brought back. And for a lot of people, I don't know how familiar our audience is, with the X-Men, but for much of their comic book life, they struggled.
Yeah.
The book never was like a big seller, and they were never like these major characters in the Marvel Universe, not like the Fantastic Four and the Avengers,
And there was a certain point where they stopped doing new stories, and they just did reprints of the early issues. They even brought in Roy Thomas and Neil Adams, who were superstars at the time, and they couldn't get sales up on the damn thing. Yeah,
because it was the lowest selling book, and they brought them on, and, they gave them like a certain number of issues, like to turn it around. And now, listen, if even Roy Thomas and Neil Adams can't sell a book, and they did all kinds of gimmicks. They killed off Professor X. They brought back Professor X. They tried putting the X-Men in plain clothes. They tried breaking them up, and they would have issues where they would go on their solo adventures, like one issue be Cyclops and one issue be the Beast and Iceman. They did all kinds, and none of it worked. And like you said, then they say, well, you know what? We're just going to make it all reprints.
Yeah, and then eventually the book just got canceled completely, and then it was Len Wein and Dave Cockrum came in with giant-size X-Men, and it's funny, everyone's talking now about, the Comicsgate people, and they're complaining about forced diversity in comics. Giant-size X-Men, number one, would be considered forced diversity by those same people today, because they brought in this international cast.
Oh, yeah. They had Storm, who was African, everybody, she was African. What was the guy? Thunderbird was a Native American.
Yeah, Apache, I believe.
Yeah, Banshee was Irish.
Sunfire was Japanese.
Colossus.
Russian. And then German Nightcrawler and Canadian Wolverine.
Yeah. Talk about your diversity. There it is, international cast.
Yes, and they brought them in, and then they were going to do the regular series, but I think Wein had some scheduling conflicts or something. He had to drop out. So then they brought in this young guy named Chris Claremont, who nobody knew anything about. And in the very first issue, he kills off one of the characters, which is something they did not do in comics at the time.
Yeah. This was still during the time when death was a surprise.
Yeah.
When they killed off Thunderbird, but as they explained later on, they said the only reason why they killed him off was that because there wasn't anything that he could do that another member of the team didn't do better.
Right, because you had Wolverine had the whole tracking aspect thing. He had the savage aspect, the attitude.
Yeah, he had the attitude.
And then the only thing he had going for him was his powers, which were his strength. And then you had Colossus, who could turn into metal. So he was, overshadowed in that area too.
Right. And he had the speed, but even still, you had other characters that could fly, and So yeah, I mean,
and it wasn't like his speed was flash speed or anything like that. He could just run at like peak, like just above peak human speed or something like that.
Yeah, he ran very fast, but not like So yeah, so there wasn't anything that he could do that another team member couldn't do better. So they said, well, he's kind of redundant, but also in a way that heightened the interest in the book, because they said, oh shit, well, they just introduced this guy and they killed him off. Well, who are they gonna kill off next? So of course you're going to come back to find out how they deal with it. Yeah.
Well, that was something Joss Whedon wanted to do in the first episode of Buffy, because I'm not sure if you remember in the first episode, but Xander and Willow, they had another friend in the first episode, and he was originally supposed to, Whedon wanted to put him in the credits, the opening credits, but they didn't have the money to do it, so they had to scrap it. But he wanted to introduce this guy in the opening credits and then kill him off in the first episode.
Cool.
Claremont took over, and then John Byrne joined him on as artist and co-plotter, and then the book just skyrocketed after that.
And the X-Men went from being the redheaded stepchildren of the Marvel Universe to being the premier super team.
Yeah, and that's when they introduced the civil rights metaphors, the Xavier Magneto friendship, and Magneto's backstory as a Holocaust survivor. Like, none of that stuff was from Stan Lee. It was all from Claremont and Byrne.
None of that stuff was from Stan Lee. Nah, all that came later on, like you said, during the Claremont. I do think, though, for some reason, it's tickling at the back of my mind that I do think during the Stan Lee thing that there was mention that Xavier and Magneto had been friends or had some kind of relationship. I'm not sure, though. Don't hold me to that. But I think that might be the only thing from the Stan Lee era. But everything else, right? Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and so taking it back, it is kind of funny when you're talking about the civil rights metaphors and how it doesn't really fit together in hindsight. And then when you think about it, well, that was introduced by two middle-aged white guys, so it kind of makes sense why it doesn't quite fit.
Well, you know what? I refuse to get all stressed out about it. But, however, I do think that it's a lazy way to make people relate to these characters by saying, okay, well, this whole mutant struggle is just like the civil rights struggle. And I don't know, to me, I'm sorry, that just like cheapens the whole seriousness of the actual civil rights movement and, the sacrifices that was made and everything like that. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. I don't know. It doesn't stop me from enjoying the comics and the movies, mind you. But, that's just how I feel about it. When it comes to the comic books, who I really consider, you've heard me say this before, who I really consider more of a danger than any mutant?
Reed Richards.
Reed Richards, yeah. This is a guy who has the nerve to have his own private gateway to a hostile dimension in the middle of Manhattan. Where did you get the balls? And I'm supposed to take your word for it. Well, I'm Mr. Fantastic. I got under control. No. And
you call yourself Mr. Fantastic. What's with the ego, too?
Mind you, this is the guy who named himself.
Exactly, yeah. I remember the first issue of Fantastic Four. You know, Ben Grimm's like, I'll be the Thing, and then Reed's like, and I'll call myself Mr. Fantastic. I can just picture like Ben just going like, oh yeah, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah, thank you. Everybody should have turned and looked at him right then and say, really? Seriously? But nobody called him on his shit, which is what Reed Richards' problem is, which is why I love Ben Grimm so much, because he's like the only one that will ever call Reed on his shit. Yeah. But the guy's got a, and we're supposed to take his word for it. That listen, I got it under control. No, man. You take that shit and you go put it someplace else. Go to New Jersey. Put that in New Jersey. Which again, the X-Men have the common decency to put their headquarters where? In a remote part of Westchester, where if the Sentinels come after them, the only ones that's going to get hurt is them.
And now in the current X-Men comics, they're not even in the States. They're off on Krakoa. They got their own island now.
You see what I mean? They put their headquarters where if their enemies come to get them, nobody else is going to get hurt. Not the Fantastic Four and the Avengers. They put their headquarters right in the middle of Midtown Manhattan. And then they got the nerve to complain that they got to pay for the property damage and the hospital bills when people get murdered, maimed, and killed when Galactus comes to eat the planet again.
Yeah. You know. Although I did want to push back on you and the whole mutants in the Marvel Universe thing, because the way I look at it is you've got the Avengers, the Fantastic Four. They get their powers through other means, right? They get their powers through science, through technology. They're not born with them.
Okay.
So it's like it's a step removed. And then when you have mutants who join the Avengers and then get accepted, like Scarlet Witch, like the Beast, that to me, that's kind of like how, all right, you know how in the 90s you had actors and actresses starting to come out of the closet and admit to being gay, and people were okay with it. But if you find out your next door neighbor was gay or that your kid's teacher was gay, then you started to have a different reaction to it. So I kind of look at it in that way, is that the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, the other superheroes, they're removed a little bit. So it's kind of like they're the celebrities. So it's okay for them to be a little bit different, a little bit weird. Okay,
now let me throw something back at you.
Okay.
You look at me. What do you see?
See an old friend of mine.
You can say it. It's okay.
See a guy known for years, big black guy.
Let's say a black guy get over with.
Okay.
Stop mumbling. You see a black guy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm black. You see me, that's the first thing you see. Okay, well, he's black. Mm-hmm. Okay, I can't hide that. There's nothing I can do to, change that. Okay, you run into Cyclops. Well, Cyclops, how do you fire those laser beams? Oh, this is a device that was invented by Professor X, so I got it from Tony Stark. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have to say, well, I'm a mutant. You see what I mean?
Well, I'm not saying that they can't pass as that, but I'm saying that that's the mentality of people, because prejudice, it's not logical. So well, I can understand why it would work, because there's one thing to see Reed Richards, who got his powers from going into space, or Captain America, who got his powers from a government experiment, and it's another thing to find out that your next door neighbor can spit fire.
He'd be handy at barbecues.
But I'm saying I can understand that, why there is that disconnect, because it's the superheroes, they didn't get their power. They weren't born with their powers. They're not here to replace us.
Yeah,
whereas mutants, they're the next stage in evolution. They're here to replace us.
But most mutants, if they never tell anybody that they're mutants, nobody would ever know.
No, that's true. But I'm saying that it has to go hand in hand with the idea of people know that mutants are the next stage in evolution.
Which is why, to me, again, it works best when it's just humans and X-Men. It don't work for me when it's, because, okay, why do we got, there's Iron Man. How do we know he's not a mutant? Mm-hmm. He tells us, well, this is a suit of armor, but how do we know?
Now, I've actually got a way that could work in the MCU, but we'll talk about that at the end of the episode, because I want to focus on the movie right now.
Okie dokie.
What was your memories going into this movie? Like the lead up to it and seeing it in the theater for the first time and all that kind of stuff?
Again, I have to say I was pleasantly surprised, as I usually am when I go, because, again, I think the key to this movie is the performances of Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, Hugh Jackman, and Anna Paquin. Am I saying it right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Who, despite whatever you may want to think or whatever you want to say, those are actually the main characters of this movie.
Right.
Everybody else, Cyclops, Storm, even Jean Grey, they're all supporting characters.
Right, which is a big weakness of the movie.
Yeah, matter of fact, I've always said this movie should actually be called Wolverine and the X-Men.
Yeah, definitely.
Because we're introduced to the X-Men through Wolverine. We see most of this movie through his eyes, and when we're not seeing it through his eyes, we're seeing it through the eyes of Rogue, played by Anna Paquin. Right. Which, again, I don't have a problem with, because these two characters are brought together because of their isolationism. She's isolated because of her superpowers. He's isolated because he wants to be.
Yeah.
So the two of them have to learn to overcome this isolationism by joining the X-Men and giving themselves over to a higher purpose. Okay, listen, I got no problem with that. Straight up and down, I love the notion story-wise. However, like I said, it's to the detriment of the X-Men concept because it reduces them to being supporting characters in their own movie.
Right. And that's been one of the weaknesses of all the Fox movies is that it's been so hyper-focused on Professor X, Magneto, Wolverine, and later Mystique.
Yeah.
And then it completely ignores all the other characters.
Yeah, there's no room for anybody. I mean, I understand why Halle Berry, she kept pushing because they said one of the bones of contention that she kept pushing for, more for her character to do. And I don't blame her. I don't blame anybody else because nobody has got anything else to do. I mean, okay, if you want to make a movie about Magneto and Professor X, then make a movie about them.
Right.
Don't give us this whole host of characters and then just have them standing around, they're in the background, nodding their head and, they have nothing to do.
Well, I think First Class was probably the most egregious in that because you had this entire team, and basically they're just there for background CGI effects.
Well, you know what? We're going to save First Class for another time because me and you need a whole episode to talk about First Class. So we're going to save that for another time because if we get started in on First Class, we're never going to stop. But on the whole, I have no problem with this movie. Is it a perfect X-Men movie? No, of course not. But I mean, as far as casting goes, and I really like how you have these great Shakespearean actors, Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart, because I find that they take the material serious. You know what? They elevate it. They treat this stuff with superpowers and superheroes and costume stuff. They treat it like it is Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And as a consequence, it lifts the material and it makes it better. And
also, Stewart and McKellen are best friends in real life. So that adds a whole other dimension. And that really improves their performance when they've only got like 2 scenes in this movie, but they play off each other great in those 2 scenes very briefly.
Oh, that's all you need, because when you have a scene that establishes and that's one thing about this movie that I really like. X-Men establishes character very well. As a writer, I always like to start off, when I introduce a character, I always like to introduce a character by having them do whatever it is that they do best. So if I write a Dylan story, usually in most of the Dylan novels people have read, I start him off like a James Bond movie. He's in the middle of an adventure because that's what he is. If I was writing a story about a school teacher, I would have her in front of a classroom teaching. In this movie, we introduced the Rogue when she kisses a boy and he goes into a coma because she's inadvertently, stolen his energy, which is her superpower, that she can steal it. So that's how we're introduced to her. We see the effects of her power. We're introduced to Wolverine. He's in a cage fight. He's in Alaska someplace and he's, fighting for beer money. And, so we're introduced to him that way. When we're introduced to Cyclops and Storm, they're using their powers. So we get really good shorthand into who these people are and what their powers are and who they are by seeing what it is that they do.
Yeah.
Which is what I really like, And
it does it especially well with Xavier and Magneto, because you've got that scene when they're at the congressional hearing and then he sees Magneto walking out and he goes after him. And just like that brief conversation, right? They establish that they're both mutants. They establish their different points of view. They even establish Xavier's powers when he starts to narrow his eyes and then Magneto goes, "Are you sneaking around in here?"
Right, yeah, exactly, yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I said, this movie does a very good job of establishing character real quick. So even if you don't know who the X-Men are, you get a good sense of what it is that they can do and what mutants are. And the movie accomplishes that in a very short amount of time. But still at the same time, it doesn't feel like they're rushing, which is another thing I like about this movie. There's a lot happening, but it never feels like it's being rushed.
I remember when this movie came out, it was in summer of 2000. And, I'd been an X-Men fan since the early 90s when the animated series came on the air.
Right.
So I became really invested, and when you're a kid and you get interested in something, you get really interested in it. So I bought up. I went to my local public library. I got every single X-Men trade paperback they had in that interlibrary system, and I read them all several times over. And so I'd done my homework a fair bit amount by the time I went to see this movie, and I actually started collecting comics regularly about, I think, maybe a year before this movie came out. And I was so excited. I remember when it came out, there was line around the block for the theater to get in to see it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it was amazing the first time I saw it.
Wait a minute. What did I say? Matter of fact, well, there wasn't a line when I went to see it because, matter of fact, we were in Florida that summer.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I saw that. I saw it in Florida. Matter of fact, were we in Orlando or in Dayton? I think it was in Daytona Beach, and that's where I saw that. And I went during the middle of the day, and we went during the day. But you know what? I was kind of surprised because it was the summertime, and there was a nice little crowd there. And everybody was like, doing a little clapping at the appropriate times, because I got the impression from listening to the chatter around me that a lot of people there, they were X-Men fans, or they knew, at least had a passing knowledge, like you said, from the cartoons of who the X-Men were. Right. So, but this movie was very well received. And
very well received.
And with good reason, because it is a good, solid movie. And like I said, I was watching it today to prepare for this, and I had forgotten, which is, like I keep saying, that's one good thing I love about doing this podcast. I'm getting to go back and revisit movies I haven't seen for a while. And I had completely forgotten just how well put together this movie is. It is. It's put together, even though they screw around with Cyclops, and I hate what they did with him, but they give him a nice little, there's a nice little scene I like where Wolverine, he's just walked into the office, and Charles Xavier is, he's introducing him to the X-Men and everything like that. And Wolverine, of course, he's giving him shit, and he's talking about, I'm out of here and everything like that. So he steps up to the Cyclops, and he grabs him, and he tells him, he better get out of his way. So Cyclops, played by James Marsden, he gives his little look over Wolverine's shoulder at Professor Xavier as if he's asking, he said, listen, I'm going to bust this character up if you don't say something to him.
I caught that too. And, that's one of the things you don't get to see it as much in here because they cut one of the best scenes, or they shortened it. And that was when Cyclops confronts Wolverine in the bedroom. And also later when they're right when they're suiting up to go to the Statue of Liberty. So if you haven't seen these extended versions of the scenes, you can see them on YouTube probably. I remember seeing them on the DVD when I got it.
Are you talking about the scene where where him and Wolverine, they're talking back and forth, and he says, you're not going to tell me to stay away from your girl, are you?
Right, that scene, yeah. There's an extended version of that scene.
Oh, okay.
And in the extended version, he comes in and Hugh Jackman, Logan starts giving him shit, and he's like, have you ever seen Real Combat Boy? And Scott just gives him this look. He's like, have you? It's like, you don't like to talk a lot about your past, do you? So do you even know if you've seen Real Combat?
Right.
And he's like giving him shit, and he never really lets Wolverine get to him. He always maintains this level, this cool head the entire time.
Right. He has this level of professionalism that I always associate with Cyclops. You know who Cyclops is. If there was a writer that really understood Cyclops and handled him the way he's supposed to be handled, you know who he is, right?
Who's that?
Cyclops. You know who he is, right?
Well, I mean, the writer. Which writer are you talking about?
No, I'm not. I'm just talking about any writer in general. There's no writer that I don't think that really has gotten the essence of what Cyclops is.
Okay.
And what Cyclops is, the way I see him, and the way, if I was writing it, this is how I would write him. He's Captain America for the mutant community.
Yeah.
He's their Captain America. And, and that's how he should be written. Unfortunately, nobody ever writes him that way. They just have him going gaga for women that can read his mind, which I think he should get on the couch and have some serious therapy for that, to find out why he's attracted to women who he can have no secrets from.
What I thought was interesting was did you read Morrison's run?
No.
Okay, what I thought was interesting in Morrison's run, because he took up the book after Cyclops' body had been possessed by Apocalypse and all this stuff. So he took it after.
Oh boy. Okay.
So he had to he had to pick up after that. And what he did with it was he kind of did this thing that I thought was really good, where he establishes Cyclops as being amazing in the field, but in his personal life he's a total train wreck. And there's this one scene where Emma Frost tells him, stop being such a damn superhero all the time, and Cyclops responds with, I've never been allowed to be anything else.
Well, yeah, that's the whole thing.
And that's what I like about him, the fact that when he puts on the visor, when he puts on the costume, he's Captain America for the mutants, but when he takes it off, he doesn't know what to do with himself.
Which is pretty much the same thing with Captain America. Captain America doesn't really have a life as Steve Rogers. He's Captain America pretty much 24/7, whether he's in the costume or not. And
that's why when the comics ever try to delve into like his secret identity, it never quite felt right.
Nah, it didn't, because he's he's the guy that's always at Avengers Mansion. He's always on call. Captain America is like a doctor or a fireman, or he's always on call. He is always Captain America 24/7. Back in the old days, when even when he wasn't with the Avengers, what was he doing? He was hanging out with Nick Fury, going on missions for S.H.I.E.L.D.
Right.
Yeah.
It's too bad they cut out all these great scenes that Marsden did and that they didn't give him more to do, because you see in these moments, like, he really gets the character, and he plays him really well when he gets the opportunity to. Like in that scene where Wolverine tries to get in his face and says, like, get out of my way. And Cyclops he looks all calm, he looks over at Professor X, and he's like, look, is this guy serious? Can I blast him? Can I blast his head off now or what?
And that's what he's basically saying. Wordlessly, he said, listen, you better talk to this cat before I bust him up. And James Marsden, the way he plays Cyclops, you believe he could.
Yeah. And he has these great moments, like this one movie in X2, when he's got that short little scene with the guards when he can't use his visor, and in the third movie when he's got completely shafted character-wise, but he gave the best performance in that movie.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's one where he dies.
Yeah. And he's only on screen for like 5 minutes, but he gives the best performance of anyone in that movie.
Yeah, because I think James Marsden had to go off to do the Superman movie, right?
Right.
And that's why he wasn't in the third movie.
Right. And we can talk more about that situation at another time. Because that's a whole other mess that Fox made for themselves.
Yeah, that was a whole mishigosh.
But this movie, I remember in the months leading up to it, when they first released the images of the characters in costume. Oh my God, the internet was on fire. Like, people were so pissed off when they first saw the costumes.
Why?
I mean, because, it was the fanboy mentality. And I remember people were saying, like, Hugh Jackman looks terrible. He's too tall. Famke Janssen's hair isn't red enough. Sabretooth looks like a hobo. And all this, everything you could think of, they were bitching and moaning about.
Well, you know what? God bless the fanboys, because if we didn't have them, we wouldn't learn to appreciate what it is that we have. And my feeling about superhero movies, and, I've lived a lot longer than a lot of these fanboys that are crying and complaining. To me, these are the movies that I've been waiting to see ever since I was 12 years old.
Right.
So I'm happy with it. And also, I understand that, okay, it's like when you translate English book into German or Russian, it's not going to be exactly the same book, because there's certain idioms of the English language that don't translate very well into German or, Russian or whatever language that you're translating it to. Movies are a translation. So therefore, they have to tweak certain things. Some costumes, you know what? I really don't mind the black outfits, because people have to remember, this was back in 2000. We didn't have superhero movies coming out every, 3 or 4 years like we do now.
Right.
So
the only superhero movie that really leaned in heavily to the spandex look and did it right was Superman the movie. At this point.
Exactly.
Like,
So
any other time it had been attempted, it looked terrible. Like you had the 1991 Captain America movie with J.D. Salinger's son playing Captain America.
Yeah.
You had the Roger Corman Fantastic Four. You had the Flash TV show from the early 90s. The Adam West show. You know, the costumes did not look right in any of these versions. So the Spider-Man TV show, too.
Yeah. And people have to understand that costumes on screen, first of all, they have to be comfortable for the actor, because these are real people that have to wear these.
Right.
They have to wear something. They have to wear something that they can act in, that they can move in. The stuntmen have to wear stuff that they can move in. You know, which is why I guess we get so much CGI now and certain things, because especially like with Iron Man and stuff like that. But you know what? You can get away with that because it's Iron Man. Right. But when you put a real person in a costume, and then I hear people talk about, oh, well, cosplayers, they do it all the time, and they look terrific in it. Yeah, but they just standing around. They don't have to act in a movie. That's
and they tried. They had tried to do the blue gold suits. Like, they did test designs of them. But... And Bryan Singer said the problem was the yellow looked like shit on film, and we couldn't make it look good. And, you know... You understand that because this was at a time when they didn't have the kind of technology to really touch them up in post-production or to make them find the right material to make them look good under the correct lighting. And it was also at a time when the public at large did not think of superheroes as something to take seriously. So you needed to lead the public into this. So you give them, and the X-Men are a good place to start with that because they're a team. They're a unit. So it makes sense for them all to have matching uniforms. That would not work if you try to do the Avengers in 2000.
I agree. 100%.
I mean, because you can't have Captain America running around in black leather.
No. But see, and also by then, like you said, the technology had caught up with that. You could put Captain America on screen in an outfit that looked realistic. Yeah. Instead of the Buccaneer boots, they had, like regular, combat boots. He wore, regular combat boots. He wore, he didn't have the mask with the wings. He had the helmet with the wings painted on the side, which worked.
Right. It was basically a military. They did what Brian Hitch did in the Ultimates design for the World War II era Cap. They just gave him basically a military uniform, but changed the color scheme to match Captain America's.
And one of the genius things of the Captain America movie, which we will get to eventually down the road, but one of the genius things is that I like how they worked in the original costume as a propaganda thing that he wore when he was on the road doing the show. So they gave a reasonable explanation for why he wore that outfit.
Exactly, yeah.
But then they translated that and they said, okay, well, he goes on this mission and he basically puts together a combat style uniform for him, which I said, okay, that was genius.
Yeah. They did a really good job with that. And it makes sense for the X-Men to have these matching uniforms. It makes sense for them to be in leather. And you've got to lead the public into this. And it's only, the success of this movie, it gave studios a chance to say, oh, well, let's push it a little further. Let's try Spider-Man. And let's try putting him in a comics-accurate costume. And it worked. And these types of things, you pushed a little bit more, and then eventually, what do you end up with? You eventually lead to Avengers Endgame, where you've got nothing but, like, unabashed superheroes on the big screen. Or you've got the DC shows where you've got the Flash running around in a red unitard and nobody bats an eye.
Yeah. And also because, let's face it, red is a more attractive color. Yellow is a pretty ugly color.
Right. And, I'm going to say something that's probably going to piss off a lot of X-Men fans, but I have always hated Wolverine's mask.
Yeah, me too.
He's got this really distinctive hairstyle. His look is so iconic without it. Why do you need to give him some, Batman knockoff mask?
Yeah, Wolverine is one of the characters I've never understood why he wore. I mean, it's not like he has a secret identity. Because everybody knows that Logan is Wolverine. It's not like so there's really no reason for him to have a mask, Yeah. So I don't know why they didn't get rid of it years ago. But again, this is another way that the movie improves upon that because they don't give any of the X-Men, none of them wear masks.
No.
Not in this movie, yeah.
I mean, the closest one is Cyclops because he wears the visor.
Yeah. But that's functional.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing. Like, they make the costumes functional. They make it make sense in the context of this world. And so that allows the public to accept the comic book tropes a little bit more. And then you got to take people by the hand and lead them into this. You can't just drop them into the deep end.
The one thing, and I've said this many times before, and I know people scream and yell at me about it, but comic book fans have to really get over it. They don't make these movies just for you.
Right.
You know, they have to appeal to a broad audience. Yes, they would like to make them just for you, but let's face it, if they made the X-Men movie exactly like a comic book, exactly like it, you know, I don't know if it would have been as successful as this movie, because...
Oh my God. Well, I mean, the X-Men is one of the, like, and I'm saying this as a fan, but it is one of the most confusing, convoluted comics ever created.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I mean, and because part of the reason was the approach Claremont and Byrne took with it was they treated it as a superhero soap opera.
Marvel was famous for that because Stan Lee had started that with Spider-Man. Because Spider-Man was basically a superhero soap opera.
Right.
You know, and Daredevil also picked up a lot. Matter of fact, you had a lot of those soap, which is another reason why I think that Marvel Comics became so popular, because back when I was growing up, soap operas was extraordinarily popular. Right. Everybody watched soap opera. My father would watch soap. My father worked for Transit, and he didn't have to go to work until around like 12 o'clock. Mm-hmm. He would watch soap operas before he left. He got caught up in the soap operas. So for Stan Lee to take the elements of soap operas and apply them to superhero storytelling, that was a stroke of genius, I think. You know, I've always thought.
That's one of the things that makes it difficult to do the X-Men as they are in the comics, is because there's all that backstory that's been done. Because they weren't thinking as much about how will this look to readers 20 years from now. They're going to think, how can we keep readers coming back now? So they would throw in all sorts of convolution in there.
Well, that's what it is. Your whole thing is to get readers to come back every month and buy the next issue. Yeah. So how can you do that? Well, you have these serialized storylines that keep going on and on and on and on. And Claremont became renowned for that, for having these storylines that just seemingly would just keep going on and on and on with no resolution.
Oh, yeah. In fact, his trick was every time he wasn't sure what to write, he would introduce a subplot.
Oh, yeah.
And he wouldn't have a resolution for it, but he'd keep a note of that subplot. So then when he gets to a point where he couldn't think of a story idea, he looks back to the subplots he already established.
Yeah, which again, that's brilliant.
Yeah, it worked really well for the series, although it also left the X-Men with a whole lot of dangling subplots, too.
Well, that was okay because you had a lot of writers that picked up on them later on, and with varying degrees of success.
And are still picking up on them, even to this day.
Oh, wow. Well, yeah, I can imagine, because X-Men is still going strong.
Yeah. Well, especially now. I mean, they've got Jonathan Hickman on the book, who did really acclaimed runs on Avengers and Fantastic Four, and then he went to Image to do some stuff there, and then he comes back to do the X-Men and to kind of do for them what he did for the other properties.
Now, how long do you think that the X-Men as a comic book is going to last? Because I know you've been predicting the death of the monthly comic book for a while now.
So what I think about that is, I don't think that comic books will die. Like, I'm not one of these people who says the comic industry is dying. I think that's we don't see all the data to really make judgments on that. We can't judge it based on what the direct market monthly numbers say. I mean, we don't know what is being sold at Comixology or how much, so we can't really make those judgments, I don't think. But one thing I think is going to happen is you're going to see a lot less of the monthly comics buying. Like, you're going to see people doing more what I do now, is waiting for the collection to come out and picking that up. So I think you'll probably be seeing more of that, because that's how most of the comics are written these days anyway. They're not written in the same serialized format. They're written as like 4 to 6 issues as one story, then another 4 to 6 issues as another story. So you're going to have more of that kind of thing, I think, as we go forward.
They're written for the trade, as they say.
Yeah.
You know, they're written for the trades, as they say. Yeah, and also, whenever people start talking about, oh, well, comic books are dying, comic books are dying, I find that after I talk to them for a while, you know, and all that, well, what do you mean the comic books are dying? Actually, what they're talking about is Marvel and DC, because when you say comics, that's who 90% of the public thinks is comic books anyway.
Right.
You know, they know absolutely nothing about the wealth of independent comics, you know, that are out there and other companies. You know, everybody just says, okay, well, it's Marvel and DC, and they don't know about anybody else, you know. And I said, oh, no. I said, there's plenty of other comics out there, you know, just I said, I'll take you to a comic book shop and you can see all the comics that are out there. So, so comics are still going to be around. I mean, I don't know what shape they're going to transmogrify into because simply because there's so much other entertainment that we have now. You know, there's just, you know, we have so many other options. I remember, I mean, when I was a kid, the big thing for me was going every month and picking up my comic books. Well, it hasn't been like that for me for about like a good 20 years, you know. I mean, so, and I think that most people now, like me, if I get a comic book, I read it on my tablet. I don't go to the comic book store. I don't even go to the library. I used to go to the library and I used to borrow trade paperbacks.
Yeah, same here.
So cheap. You know, they're so cheap now.
Well, I mean, just the other day, I picked up the Watchmen trade because they got a sale at Comixology, and I hadn't read it in years, and so it was $6.
Okay. See what I mean? Yeah.
I said, you know, I picked up the Morrison Doom Patrol run, and they had it in 3 big collections. Total price was like $15-20 for all 3.
Yeah, I mean, you were talking about this in the last episode, I believe. And Comixology, you know, they make it so cheap. You almost feel stupid for not buying it.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, I bought like a whole bunch because I read Planetary. You know, that's what I'm into now.
Oh, that's an awesome series.
So I've read the first one, and so I said, well, let me go see how much the other ones are. I went to see there's something like $5 a pop.
Yeah.
You know, for the rest, I said, man, I'm clicking like a maniac. Click, 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 you know.
Yeah, so you'll probably see more stuff like that. And plus, when you've got it, when it's digital, you know, a lot of people don't think about it as real money.
Exactly.
Like, they just go in, they're like, oh, okay, one click buy. And that's it removes the resistance. So I think you're going to see a lot more people moving to comics digitally. And I wish they would get their act together a little bit more and improve the interface, but you've got things like Marvel Unlimited and DC Universe as well.
Yeah. So like I said, I mean, comics will survive. I'm not really worried about that. I don't know I think that DC and Marvel have to seriously change their business, the way they do business.
I don't think you have to worry about them because you've got Time Warner and you've got Disney backing them. Disney and Time Warner, they're going to keep Marvel and DC around, if nothing else, just for an idea factor.
Yeah, but you don't have as many comic creators as you used to going to them with creating brand new characters.
Well, you actually still do. There's still quite a few that are being created. Like, you got the new Ms. Marvel, who's now going to be getting her own TV series on Disney+.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Okay. Well, see, that's why I like talking to you, because you got your finger much more on the... No, seriously, and you're talking to somebody who used to go faithfully to my favorite comic book store every week. You would go there and spend half the day talking to other people and buying comic books and stuff like that. And that was like the highlight of my life. It killed me when I stopped buying comic books, but when I could read a comic book in the time it took me to walk from the door to my car, and I was paying like, $3 for it. I said, nah. Yeah. It was a hobby that, was, and also I simply was not enjoying the stories I was reading. And unlike most of you on the internet, if there's something that I don't enjoy, I just stop doing it. If it's a TV show I don't like, I stop watching it.
Right.
If it's a book that I'm reading and I get to like the 4th or 5th chapter and I find I'm not enjoying it, I stop reading it. I don't understand this mentality of continuing to spend money on or spending precious time on things that you don't enjoy.
I remember years ago, I was at a comic convention in Chicago, and it was a discussion that Mark Waid was leading. And this one guy in the audience, he got into this argument with Mark Waid about the comics industry. And he was bringing up all these titles that he didn't like. This was back in the late 90s, early 2000s, right? So one of the things he said was, he was talking about the Harley Quinn series that had just started coming out by, I think, Carl Kessel. I can't remember exactly. But he was saying, like, he's like, I'm sorry, Harley Quinn is just not a funny book. I don't enjoy it at all when I read it. And then Mark Waid just says, then don't buy the fucking thing.
Yes, I'm serious. I don't understand it. Then I don't understand. Why are you still buying it then if you don't like it?
Yeah.
So I turned my back on reading at least Marvel and DC. They're independent comics I enjoy, especially comic books that are done by people of color, creators of color. So, and then I still have my collection from, the 70s and the 80s. I still got a lot of my comics from there. And I like rereading them. So, I do that. I reread those, simply because I don't like what's being done with the I find that in spirit, a lot of the characters such as Thor and Black Panther that are being done in movies, that's closer to the spirit of the characters that I remember. The ones that are in the movies now, rather than the ones that are in the actual comic books. Like every once in a while, like when me and my wife, when we go to Walmart and they've got comic books and she's walking around doing her thing, and I'll go and I'll pick it up and I'll leaf through it. And I don't recognize any of these characters now. I don't know who they are, but however, if people enjoy them, that's quite all right. God bless you. I'm glad people should enjoy what they, I don't knock people for enjoying what they enjoy. It just doesn't have anything for me anymore. That's all. But we have the movies and I enjoy them, such as the one we're talking about today.
And something I liked about this movie is that they actually made the mansion a school. Because the whole thing about the X-Men is, all the teams in Marvel, they had some sort of little shtick, right? The Fantastic Four was a family. The Avengers was like a pro football team or something like that. And the X-Men, they were a school. That was the shtick behind it. But the comics never really leaned into that too much.
Right. We just got to see the X-Men, and that was it. They was there. In this movie, and you're absolutely right. We see there's a whole lot of students running around the school. Like you said, it's an actual school.
Yeah, and they did it in a way that they allowed it to bring in a bunch of other characters in cameo roles. So you've got Jubilee, you've got Kitty Pryde, Iceman. There's one guy that some people think might have been Thunderbird, Colossus. You see all these characters in the background.
Yeah, Pyro. He's in there. Yeah, he's in there too. Yeah. There's a lot of, and you actually see the X-Men actually teaching classes.
Yeah. In fact, one of the extended scenes is Storm's lecture. And another extended scene is Cyclops teaching a bunch of students about motorcycle maintenance.
And I think that's absolutely so cool. One of the cool things I like about the X-Men, they're not just superheroes, they're teachers.
Right.
They're actively teaching the next. You know what? They do more. Like you have all of these other superhero teams that say, they have this nebulous thing that they're going to go out and fight for justice and everything and like that. But the X-Men are actually working with the next generation to actually try to make them live in the world and make the world a better place.
Well, and it's like, Xavier tells Wolverine, because when Wolverine asks, well, what's going to happen to Rogue? And he says, well, it's up to her. She can rejoin society as an educated young woman who can control her powers and blend in if she wants a normal life, or she can stay here, become a teacher, and join the X-Men.
Right. She has a choice. It's up to her what she wanted, up to her what she wants to do. But, this will be a place for her to be safe where she can figure out what she wants to do.
And you get the sense that that's been going on for a long time at this place. That's what Xavier's always been doing, is that so there are probably other X-Men who have come through, they've gone through the school, and then they went on to return to society.
Right, because not everybody wants to put on spandex and go fight the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants.
Exactly. Yeah.
They don't. Some people don't. Some people want to live a normal life, which is one of the things that I've always appreciated also about the X-Men. That, okay, listen, if you don't want to join the team, if you just want to rejoin society, God bless. See you later. But we'll always be here if you need to come back.
And they've had characters do just that. Like Iceman left and became an accountant. Beast left and went in to work as a scientist.
Yeah.
Havoc and Polaris, they left and went on archaeological digs and stuff like that.
Yeah, which was, and I think in this movie they have. No. I'm thinking of one. Even in one of the later movies, Wolverine is teaching a class or something like that. I think.
Right.
But that's
he's substituting in that one because Cyclops is in the funk.
Yeah, and I really think that that's a cool notion that they just don't run around beating up supervillains. That they're also teaching and they take an active hand in guiding the next generation of mutants in whatever it is they want to do. If you want to put on the spandex and you want to go with us and fight the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, fine. If you don't have to do that either.
And then the comics ended up bringing those concepts in. So when Morrison came on, he turned it into a school just like that. You had all these mutant kids running around the mansion all of a sudden. Later on, you had Jason Aaron did it where he did Wolverine and the X-Men, where Wolverine reopens the school and runs it.
But I'm watching this movie, and I'm sorry. I can't. Okay, two things got on my nerve. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I said I'm going to sit down and do. I'm going to write a superhero story, and I'm going to write one where the bad guys do not come into the good guys' secret base or lair or underground headquarters and sabotage something. Mm-hmm. I saw that scene. I said, oh, God, not again. But then I said, you know what? I can't really complain about because this was made back in 2000. So,
and it's also, that's also a trope that happens in the X-Men comics all the damn time. Like, there's always... That mansion has been blown up, like, I don't know, a dozen times already.
You know what? And I don't care how rich Charles Xavier is. I mean, come on. You can't keep absorbing the cost of the mansion being completely destroyed and rebuilding. And mind you, he has to rebuild it from the ground up.
Yeah.
Which means it's plumbing. Which brings me to my other thing. And I'm going to do this, so help me. I'm going to write a superhero novel where it's not going to be about the superheroes. It's going to be about the contractors that build these underground complexes and secret bases and secret... Seriously. Because who built this shit? It wasn't... I'm looking at it. I mean, even Wolverine said, damn, this is a big round room. Mm-hmm. Cerebro. How did he build... Where did you get the contractors to build it?
Well, I think with that, he probably had... Because at least in this movie, it's not quite established how him and Magneto split up. But I get the sense that Magneto helped build a lot of those underground stuff. At least as this movie was originally conceived.
But, okay, you still had the hangar for the Blackbird.
Yeah.
You got to have facilities to store spare parts. You got to have facilities for maintenance. That's a whole underground complex. The only thing that I can figure is that there must be an organization like, what was it called? Damage Control? Comes in and cleans up after superhero battles. Somewhere in the Marvel Universe, there must be this secret contracting unit that comes and builds secret bases for superheroes, the superhero teams. There's got to be.
I remember there was an article they were talking about how could Batman have built the Batcave all by himself.
Oh, my God.
With just him and Alfred. And it's like, you know what? He's got to have some help. So what happens after the contractors are done? Did he just kill them?
Every time I watch The Dark Knight Rises, I can't help but... There needed to be a scene where you had a contractor saying, okay, Mr. Wayne, explain to me one more time why you need these giant clear plexiglass cubes to come up out of the water on hydraulics. Could you explain that to me? Seriously, he didn't build it on his own.
Yeah. I think at that point, Bruce Wayne just writes a bigger check and says it's a sex thing.
The only thing that I can figure is that he goes to the other side of the world and he gets like a bunch of Chinese guys that don't speak the language and flies them over, in a plane with blacked out window and stuff like that. But even then, he's got to have armed guards to make sure they don't leave until the work is done. You see what I mean? So anyway, I'm watching the movie and I'm watching this underground complex and it's all nice and pretty and shiny and everything like that. And I said, damn, who built this shit? So anyway.
The thing that kills me, though, is how easy it is for Mystique to get in. Because especially when we get to First Class, we find out that Xavier knows her and grew up with her. So you'd think you'd have some better security measures to protect against her.
First of all, the only two people that need to have access to Cerebro is him and Jean Grey.
And not even her, because he asked her, have you ever used Cerebro? And she says no. She's like, I'm not ready for it. I don't have enough control over my powers yet.
Yeah, but still, you got to have her just in case of an emergency, like they did in this movie.
Right. When
Xavier is incapacitated, and yeah, she does have to use it, And hey, she's the only other psychic that they have. So yeah, but really, those are the only two people that need access. Cyclops doesn't need access to. He's not a. Nobody should have access to Cerebro except for Professor X and Jean Grey. That's the first thing. Now, the second thing is, as I understand. Okay, so what? So Mystique can copy somebody right down to the molecular level?
I don't think so. I think it's just outward appearance.
Because she gains access by turning herself into a copy of Bobby.
Right, and she uses the retinal scan. Right.
Now, why would a student have access, to Cerebro?
Well, in that case, it wasn't him. She changed into Professor X, because they do say "Welcome, Professor" when they pans away from her.
Okay, which brings me back to my original thing. So she can copy somebody on the in other words, she can copy their fingerprints, their retinal pattern.
Yeah, and that's something that comes from the comics as well. So it doesn't quite make sense, just like how in the comics, her clothes can transform along with her.
Right.
So yeah, it's just one of those things that you just have to kind of go with.
You just go with it. Oh, okay, fine. Yeah, because even she has the fight with Wolverine and she copies him and she's got claws. And
she copies the claws, but remember he can cut them off.
Yeah,
so they're not real claws. They're just extensions of her own body.
But he cuts them off, and there was a distinct metallic sound when he cut them off, as if they were metal. Because, see, I was thinking the same thing that you did. Well, that's just, meat that looks like bone. In which case, It should be blood gushing out.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess they probably weren't going to have blood gushing out just because of the rating.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even realize there was a metallic sound.
Yeah, I was just saying because being so long that since I've seen the movie and I read the comic, I wasn't exactly sure how her powers work. Because my whole thing was that I always thought that she just took on the appearance of something. Like, for instance, she could look like Thor, but she wouldn't be able to control the thunder.
Right, but physical mutations like claws, those things she can do because that's just manipulation of her form.
Oh.
And she's been able to do things like that. Like in the comics, she's done things like grown wings and grown claws and all those types of things.
Oh, okay.
She's even been able to increase her muscle mass to make her stronger.
Oh, okay. All right. No, I'm just trying to figure because I was looking and I'm saying, okay, well, I know she can shapeshift herself to look like other people. But when she did the thing with the retinal scan, I said, wait a minute. How would she even know what Charles Xavier's retinal scan is like? Because presumably she has to have you see what I mean? I'm sorry, folks. This is where my mind goes when I watch stuff like this. What can I tell you?
It looks like she can change some aspects of her biology, so she can change some of the she can give her body the appearance of clothing and different materials and that kind of stuff. So I guess metal would probably be okay then in that.
Because one of the more salacious things I found out about this movie was that the actress who plays Mystique in this movie, Rebecca Romaine. Am I pronouncing it right?
Yeah.
Okay. for all intents and purposes, she was walking around on that set naked.
Yeah.
I mean, she just had makeup was covering up.
She had there were prosthetics covering up the naughty bits, and then everything else was just blue body paint.
Yeah, but pretty much she was, acting that role, naked, which to me first of all, it's an impressive job. I like how she plays Mystique in this movie. Once they brought in Jennifer Lawrence, and then they started trying to make Mystique the what was that
Wolverine
character that she played? No, to me,
Katniss.
You're right. Yeah, Katniss. Yeah. That's who they were trying to turn Mystique into, I guess. They were trying to port over that appeal from the Hunger Games into that character, which to me completely, ruined the character.
Yeah. I love Jennifer Lawrence, but she was a terrible choice for Mystique, and they just kept making it worse because Hunger Games, I think, came out after First Class, and then once that hit it big, they were just like, all right, we're going to try and make her the new star of the franchise.
Right. I have a friend of mine, a good friend of mine. He likes to say that it took Marvel 30 years to completely screw up the X-Men continuity, and the movie studio, they only did it in five movies.
And they screwed it up so much. Then again, we could talk about that when we get to First Class and X-Men Origins, because both of those just completely fucked up the continuity.
Yeah, I know. It was like they just said, you know what? Literally, I can see them writing the script, and I can see the script right in my head. Fuck it. Yeah. What do I don't care. I cashed the check. What do I care?
Now, one of the things I think is a weakness in this movie is just the overall plot. Like, they didn't take this story from any of the X-Men comics. They tried to tell their own original story, and it doesn't quite work out. Like, the whole idea of Magneto using this machine to turn people into mutants. It's just the story itself doesn't really work out. It's just an excuse to get them to the X-Men and the Brotherhood to fight.
Here's my thing. I like it because it's not your typical supervillain wants to conquer the world. Plot. Magneto's not interested in conquering the world. He's not. I think that what a stronger plot would have been Mystique, because once you've taken over the identity of the senator, you've infiltrated the government. Yeah. To me, that would have been a better part. But then again, you don't have, like you said, the battles, and you don't have the pyrotechnics and everything like that. But yeah, I get your point. I'm not saying it's not valid, but I'm just saying that I appreciated seeing something different than like, oh, well, the supervillain, he wants to take over the world, or he wants to destroy the world.
Well, my real problem is how he goes about it. He's going to transfer his power to Rogue and make her do it. That's the part of it I got a problem with, because it's just like Wolverine says to him. He's like, you're so full of shit. If you really believed in this, it would be you up there instead of doing this to an innocent girl. That's the thing that's very un-Magneto-like to me.
And if you see, Magneto gives him a look like, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
You pointed out the one thing about my plan I didn't want nobody to point out. Yeah. But yeah, he's right. Well, listen, if you were that much you're okay. You want mutants to be safe and everything like that, you want to do, and you believe in your cause so much, then you sacrifice your life.
Yeah. So that's the one problem. And in fact, the original script, if you've ever read the original script, it actually handled this much better. Because in the original script, he didn't need Rogue to transfer his powers to. What he needed was the machine operated kind of like a light bulb, and it needed filament. And the filament that operated it was adamantium. So he needed Wolverine to be in it. So in fact, in the original script, Rogue sneaks aboard the Blackbird and goes along and tags along with the X-Men. And then she actually ends up saving the day.
Yeah, see again, that's why I said this movie should have been called Wolverine and the X-Men, because it's Wolverine who ends up saving the day. It's Wolverine who ends up when they're doing strategy and everything like that, he's pointing out all the things what they should be doing. In other words, the stuff that Cyclops should be doing. Wolverine is doing in this movie. To me, I mean, I don't mind Wolverine, overrated runt that he is in the comic books, but there's a lot of things in this movie that he's doing that actually Cyclops should have been doing.
And this kind of established this, and I remember when Avengers trailers were coming out, everybody was like, oh, it's basically just going to be Iron Man 3, because they're going to focus on the most popular character at the expense of everyone else. And they thought that because that's what the X-Men movies did. They focused on just Wolverine, Xavier, and Magneto at the expense of everyone else. But then the Avengers showed, no, you can actually make an ensemble movie where the other characters are just as important.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, but see, also they had the benefit that they had their own separate movies beforehand that laid the groundwork so that, okay, we knew these characters. See, the X-Men, like I was saying earlier, I appreciate the fact that they have a lot to do in this movie and they get it done and they never seems like it's rushed, but they have to introduce all these characters. They have to show you their relationships together. They have to establish their powers. Then we got to get the supervillain plot in, and we have to get the resolution of the plot. We have to get the resolution of the relationships between all of these characters, which really don't get resolved in this movie, really. But that's because, presumably they knew they had a moneymaker on their hand. That was going to make a ton of money, so they were going to come back for a sequel, which is why they left some threads hanging, especially the ending where, Magneto, he's in that badass plastic cell.
Yeah, the third act is the only thing that's really kind of weak about this movie for me. It's fine. It's just I feel like it could have been so much better with the original script that they had. And it would have made so much more sense for Magneto's character instead of turning him into a coward, basically.
Yeah, and it would have and like you said, it would have made more sense for it would have given a stronger reason for Wolverine to become involved in the plot.
Right.
If it was the fact that the adamantine, was what Magneto really needed and not, because as you said, the way it stands now, he's willing to sacrifice an innocent young girl for his own selfish ends. He says he's doing it for the betterment of mutant kind, but like you said, and Wolverine said, well, then if you felt that way, why don't you get in the machine? No, because see, I want to be around to take all the bows and cheers when it's all said and done. Really, he wants to be he wants to be heralded as the savior of mutant kind. Instead of Charles Xavier,
Exactly. Yeah.
Dirty dog.
What do you think of the performances in this movie?
Okay, once again, we'll start with the top. We'll start with Hugh Jackman. This was the movie that made Hugh Jackman a star.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, made him a star.
And well-deservedly so. I mean, I've heard the talk, he was too tall to play Wolverine. Okay, maybe so, but you know what? He got the attitude down right. He had the look. Oh, totally.
He looked like he stepped right out of the comic books, Yeah. And he had the attitude, which is the important thing.
Exactly.
And he was able to adequately portray the conflicts of the character who has, because Wolverine, much as I say, so what? But Wolverine does have a lot going on inside of him, which is his whole thing. There's a lot going on inside that he doesn't let show to anybody else.
And Jackman had a trick for conveying that, because he jumped in the shower one day he jumped in the shower at 5 a.m. and he realized there was no hot water. Now, he didn't want to wake up his wife, and so he just gritted his teeth and bore it. And he realized that this mindset of wanting to scream and lash out but having to hold it in was how Wolverine feels all the time. Right. So then every morning he took ice cold showers before filming.
Okay. Yeah, that would piss me off too. That would put me in a pissed off mood for the rest of the day. Yeah, but it's quite a remarkable performance, because again, as I said, when I was talking about Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, and I said, they're Shakespearean actors and they elevate the material. Well, Hugh Jackman elevates it too, because people who are in superhero movies, their job is to make me believe in the reality of the situation. And And that's what every actor, as a matter of fact, every actor in this movie, they do. I mean, the acting, I really don't have a problem with any of the acting in this movie, even Halle Berry.
That was the one I was going to bring up that I do have a problem with.
God, yeah. But, okay, well, we'll get to her. But, yeah, I don't have any, I really have no problem because in order to convince me of the reality of a world where people have superhero powers, you have to convince me of it. And that's what they do. And that's what Hugh Jackman, he's never anything less than convincing. When he popped them claws for the first time, there was an audible gasp in the theater.
Oh, my God. I got chills when I saw that scene.
Yeah. When he pops his claw for the first time. And then it's just like, and I keep going back to, it's just like that first scene with Michael Keaton where he got the guy hanging off the roof. He says, "I'm Batman."
Yeah. Yeah.
Or it's like that scene where Clark Kent is running across the street and he rips open the shirt and it's that he's Superman. Well, Hugh Jackman from right then, he was Wolverine.
Yeah. And it's funny because he was brought in at the last minute.
Yes, Dougray Scott was
supposed to play the character. He was cast, and then he was filming Mission Impossible 2 right before this and got injured.
Yeah, he had the job. He had it. He had signed the contracts and everything. He was going to be Wolverine. Right after he finished Mission Impossible 2, he was going to go do X-Men. And then he got hurt. And the rest is history.
Singer's first choice was actually Russell Crowe. But Crowe turned it down because he thought the character was too similar to his character in Gladiator. And he also thought it was a cartoon, and he wasn't interested in that. Other ones considered were Mel Gibson, Aaron Eckhart, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Viggo Mortensen, Edward Norton, not sure how that would have worked, Bob Hoskins, don't know how that would have worked at that time, Keanu Reeves, and Gary Sinise. And it was actually Crowe who suggested Hugh Jackman to Bryan Singer.
Okay.
Because he was friends with him. And so then they had to bring him in shortly after filming had already started. Like, they had already started filming.
Oh, okay.
They were 3 weeks into filming already when they had to bring in Hugh Jackman. Which makes it all the more impressive because Jackman did not know anything about the comics when he came in.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's impressive that he came in while they were filming. He just fitted in so well.
And he dove right into the material. Like, as soon as he got the role, right away he started buying up and reading every single Wolverine comic he could find. And he became a fan of the character because of that. So, Wolverine's signature line in the comics is he always uses the word bub. Right. That line was nowhere in the script. But Hugh Jackman made sure to ad-lib it in a few different parts. Yes, and only one of them actually made it into the final cut. But he tried several takes to say it.
But I can remember, and like I said, I just watched a movie a couple hours ago. Yeah, there are 2 times in the movie where he distinctly says bub. He uses bub. Yeah. But I mean, okay, he went. See, I am so sick and tired of these actors when they say, "Oh, well, what research did you do for the comic?" Well, I didn't do any research because I didn't want to be influenced by the source material. Wait a minute.
like the new Fantastic Four movie that came out a few years ago when Kate Mara said, "No, we were told not to read any of the comics." Like,
yeah, what? How do you not read the comics if you're playing? Okay, the whole template for how to play the character is right there for you in storyboard fashion, practically.
Exactly.
Because the comic book is what else? That's just a storyboard.
Yeah, I don't understand why people would do that, but kudos to everyone who worked in this movie because all the actors did that. They Singer encouraged them to read the source material, and all of them dove into it. Halle Berry talked about how she had like a box of X-Men comics under her bed. Famke Janssen, James Marsden, Patrick Stewart, who is a comics fan to begin with, but he had never really read the X-Men, and so they sent him a bunch of comics, and he looks at the cover of one of them that has Professor X on it, and he's like, "Why am I on the cover?"
And Halle Berry. You know what, Halle Berry. Before X-Men became a hit, I distinctly remember reading she did an interview where she complained that here she was an Academy Award winning actress and she was reduced to being in a comic movie.
I remember that too. Yeah.
Now all of a sudden, as soon as X-Men, it cracks $100 million at the box office, now all of a sudden they have interviews and now she's this lifelong comic book fan.
Right.
please. If you didn't read the comic, listen, I understand. I mean, she was a hot chick. Why would she read comic book? I'm going to get in trouble for that one. But I mean, listen, I understand if you didn't read the comic books. If you did, but I don't understand it myself. Matter of fact, if I was a director of a comic book movie, that would be the first thing. Listen, here, we'll buy you up a whole mess of the comic books. You take a week and go sit down and read them so you know who you're supposed to be playing. So at least you have some familiarity with who you're supposed to be playing.
Yeah.
Now,
and so Patrick Stewart, as soon as he fell right in love with the characters when he read the comics. And Stewart was forever like the fan favorite choice to play Professor X.
Oh, absolutely. Ever since he was in way back when he was doing The Next Generation. Star Trek.
Right, yeah. I mean, because he basically played a walking Professor X on that show.
Yeah, absolutely. People say, oh, this guy should play Professor X. I remember way back in the 60s when they were talking about doing it. Because they were talking about doing an X-Men movie back in the 70s, and everything like that. And everybody was saying, like, Yul Brynner.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if they made it back then, like Clint Eastwood as Wolverine would have been perfect back in the day.
Yeah. They were throwing around names like that. But again, casting, we see...
Wolverine was essentially modeled on the Man with No Name in the comics.
Oh, really?
Oh, basically. Come on. You look at his character in A Fistful of Dollars. You look at Wolverine. There's so many similarities between the two.
Okay. Well, I know that later on they got him into that whole samurai thing.
That came later, yeah.
Yeah, which to me also fitted too, when he got into the samurai thing and whatnot, But again, we see in X-Men, we see how casting in a superhero movie is so crucial because now, you have a hard time imagining anybody else playing Wolverine.
Oh, everyone! You go on the message boards or Reddit or anything like that, and whenever there's talk about who should play Wolverine in the MCU, everyone's saying just bring Hugh Jackman back.
Well, that's what I heard. I heard he's supposed to be coming back. They're going to make another Deadpool movie. I believe he's supposed to be in that one.
No, I don't think he'll be coming back at all because he had this great swan song with Logan, and I think he just wants to leave it like that because, I mean, the guy's what? He's like 50 now, and having to go through that workout regime where you're eating nothing but, steamed chicken and hard-boiled eggs all day, that's tough for a young guy to do, let alone a guy who's in his 50s.
Oh, listen, I agree with him 100%. He did Logan, and I believe that should be it. They should get that. That put the cap to his legacy on playing that character, and they should go with somebody completely new. Get somebody else new, because what?
Jackman's suggestion for who should follow him was actually Tom Hardy.
I can see that,
but I don't think that's going to happen now that he's Venom.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen either. You know what I think? I think that they should go with the same way because Hugh Jackman was an unknown.
Right.
And I think they should do that. Get somebody. I always think that it's always best when you get unknown people because, see, you know what? First of all, it's a face you don't recognize. So you immediately associate them with that character.
Right.
And second of all, give the role to somebody that's hungry, that want to prove themselves. Which is why I think a lot of people in this movie, Hugh Jackman, Anna Paquin, because by then she hadn't been in very many movies before she made X-Men. Right. So, she was just starting out. So she was eager to, make her mark. James Marsden, a lot of people didn't know who he was. I think the only three people in this movie that were really well known was Halle Berry, Patrick Stewart, and Ian McKellen.
Also, I also make an art for Rebecca Romijn and Ray Park as well.
I don't know. Ray Park, nobody really knew that guy.
Not as an actor, but he was known from like the Star Wars stuff.
Right. Yeah, he was known from the Star Wars stuff. But, it's not like I think if you said Ray Park to a lot of people that they would have to search their memory and that guy. But whereas and Rebecca Romijn, wasn't she mostly known for television?
I think she was still mostly known as a model at this point, but I do remember her being pretty popular because I knew who she was when she was announced.
Oh, okay. See,
that's what I'm going at, because this was before I was really into the film world. So if I had heard of these guys, then they were pretty popular.
Oh, okay then. Well, once again, I bow to your expertise, sir. Because
my lack of expertise back at that time.
No, because I really didn't know who she was at all. I mean, The only thing I knew about her is she was married to John Stamos. Yeah, that was the only thing I knew about her at the time.
I think that's mostly what I knew of her too at the time.
Yeah, because she was using Rebecca Romaine Stamos as a name.
Right.
As a professional name. And then I said, I wonder if she's related to John Stamos. And then I Googled her and I saw she was married to him. I said, oh, okay, lucky dog.
And then they end up getting divorced, I think.
Yeah, well, he's an ass, so.
So Jackman, basic character-defining performance here. Basically, I think you can say the same thing about Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, Ian McKellen. Ian McKellen, aside from the plot that you don't like, which,
Which he has no control over that, so we can't hang that on his head.
But what I look for anytime I look to see somebody playing a supervillain or any kind of villain, I look for them. There's something that I look in their performance that's telling me that, okay, they're not being a bad guy just for the sake of being a bad guy. They're being a bad guy because this is something that they have a personal stake in. And he honestly thinks that, he's doing his bit. Because having lived through the Holocaust, which was a brilliant opening scene, again, we were introduced to him in a scene that tells us everything we need to know about his character. The guy lived through the Holocaust. Okay, well, you know what? Maybe he might have a pretty damn good reason for feeling the way he does. You know? He's got a good reason. Now his methods, okay, we can debate the right and wrong of his methods all day long. But one thing I'm not debating is that, he's got a right to feel the way he do.
Right. And then from him, we talked a little bit about Marsden and how he has these little touches where there's a lot of good things he has about Cyclops in those little touches, but he's just not given enough to do in this movie. No. He's not given anything to do. He mostly, except for those little bits, he stands in the background. And, we just see him standing back there. And especially in the scenes when, like, if Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart are in that scene, notice that Marsden, he's just standing there. He doesn't have any. He should be an active participant in the conversation, but he's not. It's between Wolverine and Professor X. And he's just, like, kind of standing there with his hands behind his back saying, damn, I'm going to kill the scriptwriter. I liked his interactions with Jackman. Like, we talked about the bedroom scene and when they first meet, but also, and there's this extended scene when they're suiting up to go to Statue of Liberty. And Scott tells him, he says, Logan, if we're going to do this, we got to do this as a team, which means I need to know that you can follow orders. Can you? And Logan says, well, I don't know. Give me one. And he points to the costume. He says, put this on. And Logan looks at it. He's like, whose is it? And Scott just smiles. He says, it's one of mine.
No.
Which doesn't make any sense, because why would Scott have tiger stripes on his uniform to begin with? But it's a cool line. Yeah, but it's a cool line. And by the end of the movie, you do get the feeling that, okay, they may not be friends, but there's a respect now they have for each other. Right. Because they've been through battle when together. When they're in the statue, and like when they go through the metal detector, and he takes out his claws and he stabs it. And then he retracts only his outer claws, so he's flicking them off with the middle claw. Yeah. And even Cyclops smiles. When he's laughing at it,
He looks at it, he grins, and he gives him that, okay, I see what you did there type of grin.
Or then after he fights Mystique and he comes to find them, and Cyclops is ready to blast them. And he goes, hey, it's me. And Cyclops says, well, prove it. And he's like, you're a dick. He's like, okay, that's you.
He said, okay, you're Wolverine. And, and he says it with no rancor at all, and, like he did. He said, "Oh, okay, you're Wolverine. Let's go. Continue the mission." I said, "Okay." See, that's cool. See that, like you said, it's those little touches, which again shows to me that James Morrison, this was a guy who did his research and he understood his character and he understood the tone that that character was supposed to have, which he does maintain all throughout the movie. And I only wish to God that there had been more for him to do in this movie. You know, there should have been a scene. I mean, there was a scene where he's sitting by Professor X after he's been brain blasted, and he's sitting there and he's telling him basically that, listen, if it does so happen that you knock off and, you know, you go on to the great mutant happy hunting grounds in the sky, I will take over and the kids will be, you know, basically that's what he's telling them. And it's a nice scene, but we should have had a scene like that where Professor X is sitting up and he's conscious and they're talking.
We did get a scene like that. Was also another one of the cut scenes where
Xavier, here you go with your cut scenes again.
And this is the thing, like there was like 30 minutes of extra footage that Fox cut out of the movie.
See, now you made me want to go buy the damn Blu-ray so I can see all this shit that they should have put in the movie.
They should have put it in the movie because all these scenes were gold. Like they did so much more work establishing the characters, and they just cut them all off and left them all on the cutting room floor. And the movie's weaker for it. And they did it because Fox was afraid that the movie would become too character focused, and they wanted to be more action focused.
Ah, okay.
But yeah, this movie, it's like 90 minutes, I think, and originally it was supposed to be actually like 2 hours with all the cut scenes.
Wow. And you know, I don't know. See, I'm one of these people that are in favor of when they do these extended versions, like, you know, put the scenes back in the order that they're supposed to be in. Don't just give me a deleted scenes thing, you know, put the scenes back right where they are. So now I can watch the whole thing the way, the same like what they did with Superman the movie, that they put all the scenes back in there. But they had
done something like that. It was kind of a half-assed effort, though. So when X2 came out in theaters, Fox released what was called X-Men 1.5. And this had a feature where you could watch where when you press a button on the remote, when an X flashes on the screen, then you can view the extended scene. But they weren't integrated seamlessly into the movie, and you had to do this extra effort to do it. So it was kind of like this half-assed thing. It didn't quite fit together the way it should have.
Okay. Yeah. See, that's too much work. Yeah. That's too much work.
But if they had I would love to see an actual, now that Disney has the rights, when they end up getting around to releasing, a complete Blu-ray set of all the X-Men films, which they're going to do once they have an X-Men film in the works. I hope they do that. They release like an extended version of the original X-Men movie.
Well, if they do, I'm definitely going to get that one because, again, like with The Crow, upon watching this movie today, I have found a newfound appreciation for this movie. Because, like I said, it's put together a lot better than I remember. I mean, the story moves. There's no slow parts. But again, I am in awe about how much information is conveyed in such a short running time. And like you said, it's only, like 90 minutes long?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a long movie at all. I mean, compared to the 3-hour-plus blockbusters that we get now, this is a short movie.
Yeah.
So they don't waste any time in this movie, is what I'm trying to say. They don't waste any of the time that they have. They tell the story, but they tell it in a coherent. Oh, this is what I wanted to ask you. What did you think of the continuity screw up with Wolverine and Sabretooth?
What do you mean?
Because in this one, Wolverine doesn't recognize Sabretooth.
Oh, that I understood that to be because Wolverine doesn't have his memories.
Oh, okay.
So, because that was something else I wanted to talk about, was kind of the little nods they have to the comics here. Like, they have that because why else would, because in the beginning you think that the Brotherhood is after Wolverine, but then you find out later they're actually after Rogue. So, why in the hell would Sabretooth take Wolverine's dog tags?
Right. Yeah, right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
He took the dog tags because he knows it's Logan.
Oh, okay.
But Wolverine doesn't remember him because he has no memory, right? Xavier says, it's been like almost 10 years or something, going to place and plays without any memory of who or what you are.
I got you. Yep, you're right. Yeah, he does say that. Okay, I got you. Thank you. Okay, because I'm saying, wait a minute, isn't that his brother? Shouldn't they?
Now there are other continuity screw ups between this and X-Men Origins, which we can talk about more with when we get to Origins, and then even more ended up getting thrown in with First Class, but that's a whole other story. Because I guess every time they brought in someone to write these movies, they just never bothered to watch the ones that came before.
Which, you know what? Which to me, I don't know. As a writer myself, remember back when we were doing fan fiction?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, say like if I went to a new fan fiction site and they said, okay, well, Derrick, we want you to write, okay, like the Avengers. Because usually that's what happened a lot of times. I would take over when for some reason, I got to be known as the Avengers guy. And, but what I would do is that I made it my business to go and read everything that the writer had did before me.
Well, yeah, of course.
I felt I owed that to the guy because God, God busters that the quality. Well, that's another story. But I figured that I wouldn't be doing my job unless I familiarized myself with what had already been done.
Right.
So I don't understand why you would come on and write a movie and not watch at least watch the previous movie.
I mean, and that required a bigger time commitment for us because we'd have to. These are stories that were written in prose. Sometimes there'd be like 50 to 100 stories on a site that you have to read back on. And like you said, the quality was not always the best, so it was kind of a slog to get through some of those.
Right. I mean, like some people, it was a pleasure to say, oh, yeah, well, I'm going to be following so-and-so. Oh, great. And I would be enjoying the story as a fan of whoever wrote it. But don't let it be somebody who couldn't write a laundry list. Oh, my God, did that be a slog? But still, again, this was a commitment I said I was going to do, and I felt I owed it to my craft to do it. So I don't understand people when they say, well, I'm writing the sequel of so-and-so. Well, did you watch the first? Well, no, I didn't watch the first one. Well, how can you write the sequel of something and you never saw the first one? Stupid.
And especially because, when you're coming in X-Men Origins or when you're coming into First Class, like, there's not a whole lot of stuff you got to watch. There's basically 3 movies, and 2 of them are really good, and one of them is just kind of okay.
I mean, the blatant laziness is something that I don't comprehend.
Well, I think that's one of the problems with the some of the crew they got on these movies, some of the behind the scenes people, is that the cast, you can tell that they love the source material. Like, even if they weren't fans to begin with, they became fans when they got the jobs. But the producers, you get the sense that they really did not give a shit at all, and they didn't really care too much about it.
No.
I mean, this isn't like Kevin Feige doing the Avengers, where he actually likes the Avengers.
Right. Exactly.
These are people who brought in, like Laura Schuler Donner, who doesn't really give a shit about superheroes at all.
Which is another thing that I don't understand, because I'll read interviews, and they talk to these people. Well, I don't know who this is, and I was just brought in just to do it. Yeah, but shouldn't you at least have a working knowledge of,
right?
I mean, the material that you're working with.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't know. I just consider it to be a horribly arrogant attitude when I read these interviews with writers and directors, and they say, "Well, no, I didn't read the original. I don't have."
Not only arrogant, but also disrespectful to to the work that came before. I mean, come on. If you're picking, like, that's what I say. If you're doing an adaptation, you take on a responsibility to treat that source material with respect. Because how would you feel if someone came along and took something you created and just trashed it completely?
Bingo. There you go. You know what? It just goes back to the old golden rule. Treat others as you would want to be treated.
Right.
And I know that if somebody came to me and said, okay, well, we want you to write, X, Y, Z. I would make it my business to sit down and say, okay, well, listen, you know what? You got to give me a month to go through all of this material. Or if it was a movie series, I say, okay, well, give me 2 weeks to watch all the movies, before I even started writing, word one. But then again, that's just me.
Well, I mean, you see people like Zack Snyder who comes on to Superman and he says, well, I thought it was my job to grow Superman up. I'm like, well, if you think that Superman is immature and that it's beneath you, why the hell are you directing the damn movie?
I'm trying to tell you. You don't need to grow Superman up.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing if you say you're going to take the job and you dive into the source material and then you find out, look, I just can't connect with it. Fine. Back out, move on to something else.
But then again, it goes back to what you said about people like the different. Okay, remember how people say, well, you can't do Superman because he's a Boy Scout and people won't relate to that anymore. And bam, up comes Marvel with Captain America.
Right. And they do him as a Boy Scout and completely works.
Which shows that if you treat that character, Captain America is a man with morals. That's all. So you're telling me that nobody would relate to a character. And matter of fact, in the current political, social state of this country and now, I think that's why Captain America was so successful.
Oh, yeah. Because it was drawing that contrast between the two.
Yeah. I think that's exactly why. And I think that if a Superman movie was done in that exact same way, it would be a success because that's what people expect from that character.
Right. People want hope now.
And it's like I always say to people. People always say, well, I can't relate to Superman. I tell them, well, you're not supposed to.
Right.
You're supposed to relate to Clark Kent. You aspire to be Superman.
Exactly. Of
course you can't relate to Superman. He flies. He changes the course of Mighty River. He bends, steals, and bears. But you aspire to what he represents morally and spirit.
Right.
That's what But Clark Kent is the regular, because all of us feel like there's something special inside of us that if we take off, what we wear every day, going to a 9-to-5, we're Superman inside.
Right.
Yeah. But once again, I'm not running things. I just,
We should be running things. We should be. Didn't we just have 2 predictions that we said on this podcast and it came true? Yeah. So we were talking about what was the first one? I'm blanking now. It was something to do with Crisis. It was something to do with Crisis on Infinite Earths, I believe.
Right. It was something to do with Crisis on Infinite Earth. Another one was that they just said that they're trying to get Michael Keaton to do Batman Beyond.
Right. Although that's from We Got This Covered, so.
Yeah.
We've got to be careful looking too much into that.
Yeah, but we should be running things.
They should be giving us the jobs, yeah.
If they want it done right, but hey.
If they want it done right, yeah. That's the thing. They don't want it done right.
Okay, we're coming up on about 2 hours here. So you want to?
Well, what did you think? I want to talk a little bit briefly about the cast. What about Famke Janssen? What did you think of her as Jean Grey?
Oh, I always liked her. I like Famke Janssen. You know what? She's one of those actresses that can't do anything wrong to me because she always commits to what she's doing. And telekinesis is one of those superpowers that to me is kind of hard to pull off because it's not like you have to do super strength because, you could pick up something and you can show the strain on your face and everything like that. But, I mean, with telekinesis, there's a part where Wolverine, he's lying on the table. And it's when they brought him to the X-Mansion. And she's making stuff float into her hands. She's standing examining. And it's the way that she does it. She does it as if she does it every day.
Yeah.
It's no exaggerated gestures like she's, pulling it to her with a hand. She just holds up a hand and lets it kind of naturally float into there. And I kind of like that because if this is something that you do every day, you don't do exaggerated gestures. You don't reach out for things. You bring it to them. That's why you have telekinesis. I
thought she did a really good job. One of the things that I wish we had gotten, and that we never got in any of these movies, is her relationship with Storm. Like we never get any interaction between them.
No interaction. I mean, they might as well not be on the same team as far as the interaction between them. Yeah, we should have had a scene where these are the 2 main female characters, or they're supposed to be. Rogue is actually the main female character. But it would have been nice to have a scene with the 2 of them talking.
And now that you say that, I just realized, Rogue never really... The female characters in these movies, they almost never interact with each other.
Never. You never see any... You never see any interaction.
Like there's no
It's
sort of like any sort of like, you know, Rogue going for them for like a looking to one of them for like some mentorship or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, you would naturally think that Rogue would, you know, immediately bond with Jean or whatever. Well, what's the professor like? What's Scott like? When did you come here? You know, because that's what women do. You don't see. It's like I recently watched the John Carpenter movie, The Fog, and one of the most curious thing about this movie is that Jamie Lee Curtis and Janet Leigh, mother and daughter, now they're in a horror movie together. They never have a scene together.
Wow.
Yeah, which struck me as really weird. Why wouldn't you have these two women who have been in iconic horror movies? Why don't you have them have a scene together?
It'd be like if you did Heat and you never had Al Pacino and De Niro interact.
Bingo. There you go.
And then there's Halle Berry, who I don't know what the hell she was doing in this movie. I don't understand. For the life of me, I don't understand why you would get Halle Berry, who doesn't even care about the X-Men, when you've also got Angela Bassett, who wanted to play Storm.
For years, I have heard the rumor. I don't know how true this is. If anybody out there can verify or disprove this rumor, believe me, I'll be the first one to appreciate it. But for years, what I've heard that Angela Bassett actually did lobby hard for the role, but the studio felt she was too old to play the part.
Which is ridiculous. Like, even now, she looks like she could still play the part.
Of course it's ridiculous. She's Angela Bassett. Yeah, she could have played it. What it was is that they just wanted to skew the cast as being young, and they already had Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen.
Plus, they also had Halle Berry coming off her Oscar win, so she was like the hot thing in town.
Well, I mean, you know, she was the hot thing. I mean, then. So they were hoping to bring. And then, of course, you want to bring in the African-American audience. Yeah. Because she's like the only black person that's in the movie.
Yeah, the only one. And then she makes it even worse with this really terrible accent.
I felt that what it was is that, and this proves her maintaining later on that she was a comic book fan, because she gave no, how can I best put, there's no personality to Storm.
No, not at all.
She's just there.
And when in the later movies, when she does put some personality in, she goes angry black woman route. She doesn't. Yeah. She's nothing like Storm from the comics.
And now, before y'all Halle Berry fans jump on me, tell, oh man, why are you going to diss her sister? Actually, I think Halle Berry, when she wants to be, she's a brilliant actress.
Right.
If you've ever seen her do the Dorothy Dandridge biopic, oh my God. And then there's another movie that she does where she plays a schizophrenic. I'm trying to think of the name of the movie. Frankie and something. But I'll put the review up on the site. I'll put the review up on the Superhero Cinephiles Facebook page when I'm finished with it. But it's a movie where she plays a schizophrenic. The point I'm trying to make is that Halle Berry can act, and she can act very well. A lot of times, I think that even no matter how brilliant an actor you are, sometimes if you're not given anything to do, well, then there is nothing for you to do. And that's the case in this movie. The part was severely underwritten.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they gave her one of the stupidest lines, and I give her all the credit. Matter of fact, I'm ragging on her, but I give her all the credit in the world for trying to make that stupid ass line work.
That line was terrible.
Oh, what line is it, Perry? Go ahead.
Do you know what happens to Toad when it gets struck by lightning? Same thing that happens to everything else.
What? What does that even mean?
You know what's even weirder? Do you know who wrote that line?
Who?
Josh Whedon.
Really?
Yeah, because he was brought in to do rewrites, and a lot of his draft was thrown out. The only two things that made it through were the scene where the interactions between Cyclops and Wolverine in the statue, and Storm's line to Toad.
That is without a doubt. And like I said, I give her all the... Because you know what? If it was me, I would have said, no, I'm not saying that. I'd rather not say nothing and just blast him with a lightning bolt and let's go on to the next scene. I'm not saying that. But you know what? She tries her best to make it work, and I give her credit for that. You know, See, that's a professional. But still, this is a case, going back again, when you do casting right, that actor becomes indelibly associated with that character. Right. Nobody associates Halle Berry with Storm, I'm afraid.
No.
They don't. You know.
When I watch this movie, I'm not seeing Storm. I'm seeing Halle Berry in a wig.
Yeah, well, yeah. You know, and again, listen, I understand she was hot at the time. I mean, I'm talking about hot as far as the box office, folks, even though she is hot, period. But, you know, listen, I understand all that. But she didn't know the character. She didn't know what character she was supposed to be playing, you know, and she had to work with a script where her character was underwritten. She really, you know, she didn't have much to do.
And going along with being critical of some of these actors, the other one that I think is a really weak performance is Anna Paquin. Like, just like Halle Berry is not Storm, Anna Paquin is not Rogue. Not the one I know from the comics. She's way more Kitty Pryde than Rogue.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, this is Kitty Pryde's personality. And
we're not even teenage Kitty Pryde. This is very young Kitty Pryde's personality. Yeah. Like when she first joined the X-Men.
Yeah, this is it's although I do like the chemistry between her and Hugh Jackman. They have great chemistry together, and like I said, it goes back to the theme of these two people who are isolated, not only from humanity but from mutant kind as well, because of their ability. In Wolverine's case, it's because he's done it to himself and because of his memory. He doesn't know who he is. That's why he's isolated. She's isolated because of her power. She can't touch anybody, but they form a bond because they're, in a weird way, it's their isolation that draws them together.
Right.
Because they recognize they recognize themselves in the other person. And I really do like their chemistry together. However, whenever I think of, Rogue, but she would have been too old for this part too. They would have said, Reba McEntire.
Okay, yeah, definitely would have been too old, but I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, but like that sassy Southern type,
right?
You know, because whenever I read the comic book and I read her dialogue, that's whose voice I heard. You know, Reba McEntire. Okay, yeah,
that kind of attitude, that kind of personality, definitely.
Right, that kind of attitude, that type of personality. Yeah, this is. As you said, this is like, you know, Kitty Pryde when she first joined the X-Men and she didn't know what to do, which is what the movie is about, because we are introduced into the whole mutant subculture by these two characters joining the X-Men. You know, they didn't know about this war going on between Professor X and Magneto and about the school and, you know, mutants. You know, they didn't know about it, you know, until they got thrown together and then got into the situation. So that's understandable. But, yeah, I mean, I like Anna Paquin. I do. I like, you know, I'm not as hard on her as you are, apparently, because to me, she fulfills what she's supposed to be doing in this movie.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah.
One performance that really surprised me was Ray Park as Toad, because, you know, Toad's always been kind of like this joke character for most of the time in the comics, but, you know, Ray Park actually makes him into someone who's kind of a threat.
He makes him dangerous in this movie.
Yeah. And he makes him funny too. Like, he has these these little quips he gives here and there. Like, he fucking teases Sabretooth.
Yeah, he got the nerve to talk shit to Sabretooth. I said, "Oh shit, yeah, because he gets off a couple of good one-liners at him, you know." And Sabretooth doesn't touch, you know, he doesn't say anything to him. Yeah, Ray Park. If anybody had told me that he would make the Toad a dangerous character, I wouldn't have believed it. But yeah, he does.
Yeah. So he did a really good job, and I wish we'd seen a little bit more Toad in some of the sequels, but we never saw him again after this.
Well, I suspected they had planned for him because we never see. We just see Storm blast him off the Statue of Liberty,
right?
And he lands in the water, and then we never see him after that. And you know, my theory is that, listen, if I don't see a body, if I don't see a funeral, well, then the character is still alive,
right?
Especially in a superhero movie.
Oh, definitely.
If I don't see nobody with a sheepskin saying that not only is he really nearly dead, but he's also really dead, to me, he's not dead.
All right. So, any final thoughts about the X-Men movie and kind of like the effect it had on superhero cinema?
Okay. I think that it was most fitting this movie came out in the year 2000 because even though the 21st century didn't start then, most people just take it, okay, this is when the new century started, 2000. Right. And I think that it's most fitting that X-Men did start in 2000 because, as you said, it started a whole new phase in superhero movies. There was a level of sophistication in this filmmaking. There was a level of sophistication in the acting, as well as the casting choices. With, like I said, in particular with Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, there was some measure of respect with the source material. There was an effort to make this about more than just, okay, well, we're just going to have the good guys punching out the bad guys. In that we're dealing with the issue of humanity being supplanted by mutant kind and the fear of that. So there was a level of sophistication that was attempted, and I believe largely accomplished in this movie. As I said, I watched it today. Like the last time I watched this, I think it was when Logan came out. And but now I was watching it with a critical eye toward discussing it here as opposed to just pleasure, and I found a lot more in this movie. Like I said, in that level of sophistication that it tries to achieve that I hadn't noticed before. And I got to give this movie a lot of credit for that. And the director, Bryan Singer, no matter how much he screwed up later on in life, folks, I have to give him credit for this. Because this is a superhero movie that works. Despite all the things we've been knocking it for, it works for me. Not only as what I am now saying, yes, it's a landmark in superhero cinema, but also just film, period, because it's a superhero movie that we can take seriously, and it works on a lot of levels that regular movies work on that we just take it for granted because we never saw them work in superhero movies before X-Men.
Right. I mean, I think this was probably the movie, even more so than Batman, probably the first movie since Superman that really embraced the source material and took it seriously. Like, Batman to a small extent did, but Tim Burton's own admission was, he didn't really care too much about the comics.
Right.
And Blade, we talked about, they didn't even want Marvel's name on it, so they didn't really care too much about embracing the source material.
Yeah, this was a superhero movie like Superman that wasn't ashamed to be a superhero movie.
This was also the first time we got a Stan Lee cameo.
Yeah. He's the guy selling hot dogs on the beach.
Right, yeah.
When Peter Davison comes out of the water.
Yeah.
Yeah, Peter Davison, who also was very good in this movie.
He was really good, yeah. I liked he made Senator Kelly's position understandable. Like when he's on the phone and he's talking about comparing mutants to gun registration.
Right, exactly. And see, again, that's what I'm saying. It goes back to motivation. Yeah, did I like him? No, I didn't like him as a human being. But I understood his position. I understood why he felt the way he did. And man, he had one of the creepiest death scenes I've ever seen. That shit was straight up fucked up. And Halle Berry runs, she runs out. And no, I didn't blame her.
I just realized, I remembered one plot hole in this movie is, so Xavier knows who the Brotherhood is, right? Because he mentions that when he meets Wolverine, he says that, Magneto was sent Sabretooth after you. So he knows who Sabretooth is. He knows who, obviously we know from First Class, he knows who Mystique is. But only Magneto uses the helmet to avoid detection. Like, he never has to. Why doesn't he ever try to track Sabretooth or Mystique?
Oh, good point. That's an excellent point.
I mean, it's one thing if Magneto's working alone, then that makes sense. But it just seemed like the whole, I wear the helmet to keep Xavier out, just didn't really, to keep him from tracking me, just didn't really fit.
Which could have been So, and as we see in later movies, Charles Xavier and Mystique were intimate, or whatever you want to call it. So he knows about her, and it could have been very easily solved by Magneto saying, "Well, here, wear this headband." Well, why should we wear the headband? Well, it's made out of the same material as my helmet.
Right. Yeah.
Charles Xavier won't be able to track you. See, bingo. That's one simple line. Could have fixed the whole thing, but you know what? That's a good point. I never thought about that before. But Magneto is the only one that's wearing that helmet. So why did Xavier just try to track the other 3 members?
Yeah. Or just don't reveal that he knows who Magneto's working with, or something like that would have worked. But anyway, overall, I think my opinion's pretty much largely the same as yours. There's some things in the movie that don't hold up over time, but when this movie came out, it was revolutionary. It changed everyone's attitude towards what superhero movies could be. Because
absolutely, yeah.
Before this, we had the big tentpole superhero movies were really Batman and Robin and Spawn, both of which were terrible.
Agreed.
So Hollywood pretty much thought, superheroes are dead, it's not going to work, and Fox was even unsure of this movie because they only gave it a budget of $75 million. They weren't confident in this movie at all. That's also why they cut so many scenes out. And only after it started becoming successful, then Fox said, okay, well, maybe we should think about a sequel.
Well, because what had happened was that you had the thing where people were going back and seeing it in the theater 2 or 3 times, especially the X-Men fans, who had been waiting.
I'm pretty sure I saw this 3 times in the theater at least.
Oh, see what I mean? I saw it with my wife in Florida, and then I believe when I came back to New York, I went with some friends of mine to see. So I saw it twice in the theater myself, and I'm not even an X-Men fan, and I went to see it twice. So and I know people that they went back 2, 3, even 4 times in the theater when it was in the theater, to see it. And then of course, as soon as the DVD came out, boom, they bought, that thing sold out. $75 million, really. That wouldn't even pay for the catering on Avengers Endgame.
I know.
That was the budget for the catering.
Yeah.
$75 million. Oh my God.
So even though you don't like the X-Men interacting with the rest of the Marvel Universe, you like them more on their own. We know it's going to happen.
Oh, sure as you're born, it's going to happen. Of course.
So, how would you do it? How do you think it should be done?
How would I do what?
Bringing the X-Men into the MCU, bringing the idea of mutants into the MCU.
Well, you know what I would have done if it had been me. At the end of Avengers, the Endgame. Endgame, I would have had shots, of different places, all around the world, showing how people were reacting to, their loved ones being brought back. And I would have cut to Westchester and the X-Mansion, and you would see all the students hugging each other. And I would have just had that. And then I would have cut to, the Baxter Building. And I would just show the Baxter Building, just showing that by the snap, they're now in this universe. Which would explain, because now, to bring the X-Men in, you already established in the Marvel Universe that, now you got to establish mutants now. In other words, is what I'm trying to say. Because we've been through, 22 movies and we haven't had mutants? How come we haven't had? Which is why I want to see how they want to do it with, it's not the Inhumans. What's that other group? The Jack Kirby.
Oh, the Eternals.
The Eternals, yeah. I want to see how they're going to do that. Because they're going to, they've been around for that. Okay, well, how come we haven't seen them before? See, now that's the problem. You got to not only bring in mutants, but establish, how come we haven't heard of them before?
I think Neil Gaiman did an Eternals miniseries. I bought it off Comixology, but I haven't read it yet. But from what I've read about some of the reviews and stuff, they said that it opens with a lot of the Eternals being amnesiac and trapped in these different lives. So maybe they'll do something like that with the Eternals. Well, but with mutants, I've actually got I've got an idea for how I think it could work pretty well. So we established that Wanda and Pietro got their powers from the Infinity Stone.
Right.
My theory is, what if we have had this? Mutants are next step in human evolution. They've been around for a long time, but we're talking very, 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 very small numbers, like 1 in a million type of thing. So that allows for, you have some mutants who are already around. So you had like Apocalypse way back when. You had Wolverine, Sabretooth, Namor, Xavier, Magneto. They've been around, but mutants have been in such small numbers that characters like Xavier and Magneto, they've been able to keep it quiet, right? Maybe even get some help from S.H.I.E.L.D. in that. Because Nick Fury, you get the sense he's been involved in a lot of other different stuff.
Well, I think that's the only way that you can go now.
Well, and then what I'm saying is, now that we know that the Infinity Stones gave Wanda and Pietro power, and only them, because they say they're the only two of Strucker's experiments who survived. So my theory is, Wanda and Pietro had this latent X gene that the other test subjects didn't. And the Infinity Stones awakened that X gene and gave them their powers. So then when you have the combination of the two snaps, because Rocket said Earth became ground zero for this cosmic source of energy that had never been seen before. Right. And you had it done twice. Or 3 times, actually. Because you had Thanos doing it, then Banner, and then Stark. Yeah, and then Stark did it last. So you've had these influxes of cosmic energy. So I'm just thinking what happens is that energy has affected a lot of people. So now, instead of mutants only being like 1/10 of 1/10 of 1%, now they're like 10% of the world population have this X gene that's been activated. So now it's becoming an issue.
Yeah. Okay. Now, see, that's a perfectly logical and sensible way to go, given what we know of in the Marvel universe at this state. Because to me, I really cannot see them going that tidal route and say, oh, well, mutants have been around all this time. We just didn't even know about it. No.
Right. And also, I think bringing in a multiverse explanation where you just bring all these mutants in from another reality, I think that's really lazy.
Yeah, that's lazy too. Yeah. I mean, but your way of doing it, like the cosmic radiation from the snaps have like accelerated the process of mutations, and now you got all these people now with mutant powers. And like you said, it could very well be that Nick Fury knew that Professor X has been a mutant all this time. And of course, we get a scene like when he went to Stark. Now he goes to, Professor Xavier and says, okay, you remember that plan that you was telling me about your school and the X-Men? He said, well, I think it's time you initiated that. Something like that.
Well, in the Ultimate Comics, they had the background of Xavier and Magneto is that they originally started their school together in secret in the Savage Land. And so I think you could have something like that, or you can bring in Krakoa like they're doing in the current X-Men comics. So where Xavier and Magneto have spent like the past 10, 15 years secretly gathering mutants, like whatever ones they can find. So there's like these small number of mutants they've got there. So that way you could have like a team already in place by the time the first movie starts, and now they're just coming out in the open. Although I think what I would do is I would not put Wolverine in the first X-Men movie. I would give him his own movie first, and then later bring him in an X-Men sequel.
Yeah, I mean, and see now with the way that they're making these movies, you could do that. Matter of fact, you could have an X-Men movie and a new Wolverine movie come out in the same year.
Although, you know what I would really think would be perfect is if they did an X-Men series on Disney Plus instead of doing a movie. They won't do that, but I think that would be the perfect way to do that, because the X-Men, like Spider-Man, like Daredevil, works best in a serialized fashion. And I think if you did 6-8 episode seasons, you could do things where you have like the first season is with the original X-Men. Then there's a lot of characters. Yeah, and then the season finale could be them going to Krakoa and getting trapped there, and then season 2 you bring in the international team.
There's a lot of characters that, and we saw from the Netflix series, because as I've been telling people this for years, not every character needs to have a big CGI summer blockbuster.
Right.
Some characters like Daredevil works very well as a weekly TV series, a
Exactly.
TV series. Luke Cage works very well as a TV series. X-Men, X-Men now with the level of technology that we have and with special effects, it would have been impossible to do an X-Men TV series. But now you could do it.
Yeah, especially if you're doing it on Disney Plus.
Yeah, you could do it.
I mean, they're not going to do that because there's so much money they'd be leaving on the table. But
oh yeah, absolutely.
But that would be the perfect way to do it, because then you could really lean into like the character development and the relationships changing and all the soap opera elements that made the X-Men so popular to begin with.
And I think that from what they're talking about, from the lineup that they've got already, they're concentrating on they're saving the bigger characters. I mean, for the movies.
Right. Yeah.
Because I think there's a Hawkeye series they're going to do.
Yeah.
They're going to do the Winter Soldier.
Falcon and Winter Soldier. Yeah.
Right.
Then,
yeah. So
Scarlet Witch,
yeah.
WandaVision.
Yeah.
I think there's also been talk about a War Machine series too.
War Machine. Everybody and their mother says Moon Knight. I haven't heard it yet, but
No, I think that has been officially announced. Moon Knight's been announced, and She-Hulk has been announced.
Well, She-Hulk I'll be watching. As a matter of fact, I just signed up this past weekend. I signed up for Disney Plus.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Me and my wife talked about it, and I said, well, because she wanted CBS All Access. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, I'll tell you what, you pay for all access and I'll pay for Disney Plus. So that's how so as it stands now, I'm paying for the Netflix and Disney Plus, and she's paying for Amazon Prime and CBS All Access.
Now, one other thing that's been coming up about bringing the X-Men into the MCU is people are talking about how to do Magneto, because you can't really have him believable as a Holocaust survivor anymore. So what do you think they should do in that situation?
Matter of fact, funny you should bring that up. As a friend, I was talking with a friend not too long ago about, because, The Watchmen debuted, TV series Sunday.
Right.
So we were talking about Watchmen, and don't ask me how the X-Men got it. Well, this guy, X-Men always get into a conversation. You'll be talking about Vanessa Del Rio in porno movies, and he brings in the X-Men. But I want to steal
is this someone I know as well?
No.
Okay.
So I'm going to steal his idea. His idea was that to make Magneto Vietnamese.
Okay.
He was a child during the Vietnam War. Mm-hmm. And, he saw what the American, did to, his people and everything like that. And, he's Vietnamese, and he's also a mutant, Mm-hmm. I mean, he's Magneto. He's still got the same powers and everything like that. But just make him Vietnamese and give him a background instead of, the Holocaust. Because like you said, you can't use that anymore.
Right. Now, I was thinking Kosovo from the Balkans in the early 90s with Milosevic and the ethnic cleansing that was going on over there.
Okay, yeah. Okay, well, bingo. There you go. I mean,
but then something else came out, and people were talking. There's a rumor that's been going around that they want they're looking to black actors to play Professor X and Magneto. Now, if they did that with Magneto, I think you could easily do Rwanda or Darfur.
Okay.
I think either of those would work.
Oh, see, that's a rumor I hadn't heard, that they were looking for black actors for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So thinking about one name that I saw people, obviously, whenever someone's going to mention a possible black actor, his name always gets dropped, but Denzel Washington, people were saying for Magneto.
Would he want to do it, first of all?
That's a good question, but just speculation-wise.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you want to go with the whole thing, making the parallels with the civil rights, and everything like that. Yeah, I can see Denzel Washington. Although, you know what? If you're gonna go with black actors for Professor X and Magneto, I would prefer to find younger actors.
Okay, that's kind of what I'm thinking as well.
Yeah, because if you're gonna have a movie series right? I would think that because usually what do? They sign them up for about 3 movies, right?
Right.
Usually these actors. And so we're talking about what, like 10 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, basically. So I would actually, not that I don't think that Denzel couldn't do it, because then he's Denzel. He can do anything.
Right.
But
and he played he played Malcolm X, who's the Magneto analog anyway.
Right. Now, okay, you went a little bit further ahead, but yeah, that's where I was leading up to, that since he's already played Malcolm X, it wouldn't be that difficult for him to play Magneto, who is supposed to be, an analog to Malcolm X. So that wouldn't be difficult. Yeah, so I could see him doing it. Me, actually, I would go a little bit younger, considering that, these actors are going to, and also it's very physically grueling to play, to be in these movies.
Right.
So I would skew a little bit younger, but there is no reason why Denzel couldn't. But of course not. He's Denzel. He can play anything. And Ian McKellen wasn't a young man when he played Magneto either.
Right. All McKellen really had to do was he just had to hold his arms out to the sides mostly.
Well, yeah. And I mean, listen, let's face it. Most of the physical stuff is done by stunt people anyway. So it's not like, Denzel's actually going to be physically doing all of this stuff. Like you say, he's going to be lifting his arms and stuff like that. So, yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So now we got to wrap up now. So what are we watching for the next episode? Because it's your pick.
Well, what I wanted to pick, but I have not verified it yet. I wanted to do the TV movie version of Doctor Strange, which was shown in the 1970s. But before I committed myself to it, I wanted to see, what it was available on, because it's kind of an obscure movie, and I don't know if it's available on YouTube or Amazon Prime, whatever. But I'm going to go with Doctor Strange for now. And when I find out what it's available on, I'm going to send you an email and confirm it. And if not, then I'll pick something else. Is that
okay? So we'll tentatively plan for the original Doctor Strange movie, not the new one with Cumberbatch.
No, not that one. I'm talking about the original made-for-TV movie with Peter Hooton starring as Sir John Mills is in this movie. Yeah, Jessica Walter. So if I can find it,
I've never seen this, so it'll be interesting if we can
like
find
I said, I've been meaning to look for. I said, well, let me see if it's on YouTube or Amazon Prime or Netflix or some format where you can watch it. But I can watch it too, because I haven't seen it, in God knows how many years. But if I can find it, I'll let you know. And if not, like I said, I'll just find something else. Okay.
So that's our episode now. Head on over to superherocinephiles.com as the website. Superhero Cinephiles on Facebook. You can join the group. We'll start a discussion thread about X-Men and what you think about the possibility of bringing the characters into the MCU and all that fun stuff. Okay, that wraps us up for this episode. This has been Superhero Cinephiles. I'm Perry Constantine.
And as always, I'm Derrick Ferguson, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. You got a lot of good stuff in there to chew over until next time.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you guys next time.